you're Abed. And then it occurred to me that I'm Abed because I'm the one who is putting myself in a film in my real life.
Dude, I'll eat GMO'd bananas. I don't care. My baby loves bananas. You're dropping a hard R on a guy. I gotta imagine that you're gonna turn over and be like, what the fuck did you just say? I don't like.
You know what? Hit him. But I think I look like Trey Cool from Green Day, which is something.
I can see that.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan. Cause that's what's that? Let's get ready.
And just like a red, white, and blue phoenix rising from the ashes of political bipartisanship, we are back to Salt of the Streets podcast.
This is Saturday, November 30th, 1:03 p.m. episode 74.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Salt of the Streets podcast, your one and only source for social and political commentary and all the weekly news, pop culture, and sports that you can handle. And the best part about the whole deal, it's all built from the ground up for people like you and me, the everyday normal person. So come down and join us as we discuss life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and continue our endless efforts to bridge the gap between people and information. As always, we are your hosts. I'm Colin.
I am Donovan.
And today we are joined by a very special guest. He's a freelance writer at Onyx Path Publishing, Treasure Golem at Absolute Tabletop, host of the Roll Up and Die podcast, and game master for the Be a Better Game Master YouTube channel. Michael Barker, welcome to the Salt of the Streets podcast.
Thanks. I didn't realize I actually did that much stuff until right now.
You're way more legit than us.
So this is my show now. Your show. I'm
Absolutely.
You're the third co-host. It's
Definitely. From now on, this is how we're going to do this. I don't know if we need to Skype it or whatever, but this is going to happen. And coming up on this week's show, while we get to know Mr. Michael Barker here, we're going to be talking about the Navy Secretary, Richard Spencer, President Trump, and the Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher. We have some impeachment talk and probably some 2020 candidates talk and just some general political heyday stuff.
yeah.
I think.
nice.
But yeah, it'll be cool. Cool.
Cool.
So we were just discussing before we started taping that Michael Barker and myself have a love for the show, I think vastly underrated show.
Vastly underrated.
Community. And we've discovered that Donovan has never seen it because he's a terrible piece of shit.
What's the guy's name on there? Joel McHale?
Joel McHale,
Yeah,
Chevy Chase is in there. Donald
really?
Glover is in there.
Really?
Are you kidding me right now?
Allison Brie.
Allison Brie's in there.
That's my future ex-wife. Sorry, sweetheart. It's just the way it is. You know it. Adderall Annie, if you will.
Adderall Annie. Oh my gosh. Seriously.
I don't know
today.
that one.
Start today.
But you were just telling me, Michael, that you go to a community college now.
I do.
And do you take a Spanish class?
That's the one class I take. And I formed a Spanish study group in this weird, like, microcosm of the community television show that has become my life.
It's weird.
It's one of the, it is actually.
I love it.
Interesting.
I love it. Do you have a wily cast of characters in your study group?
Oh, so wily. We have
So wily.
and I have conversations with them like, okay, you're Adderall Annie, you're Donald Glover, I just like go through. You're Troy, right? You're Abed. And then it occurred to me that I'm Abed because I'm the one who is putting myself in a film in my real life.
Oh my God.
I know.
You're the real life Abed.
I'm the real life Abed.
God damn it, Donovan.
There's a lot of famous people on this show.
Oh,
yeah, it's a great
so
show,
amazing,
man. It was fucking phenomenal. What was it? It was like
Paget Brewster.
7
she's
seasons
funny.
and a movie is what we were promised, I
yes.
think.
And where's
the movie?
the fucking movie?
The movie is what's left.
Yeah.
It says only 6 seasons on here.
Oh,
Or
maybe
6
6 seasons in a movie. I
Yeah.
can't remember.
Either way, it was phenomenal.
Well,
I don't like the show. I hate the show. So it doesn't count.
It's terrible.
I was really just trying to be optimistic that maybe you have another season and a movie coming,
Oh, maybe.
That might be nice.
I mean, they could do like a Rick and Morty thing and come back after like 5 years.
Good old Rick and Morty, right? You
Dude,
watch Rick and Morty, Michael Barker?
Yes, I do. I have seen Rick and Morty. Good old Rick and Morty, as you said. I've seen Rick and Morty. I believe I've seen the whole first season. I am aware that I believe it was originally called Doc and Marty because it was based on Back to the Future characters, Doc and Marty McFly.
Looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah. But then obviously, I'm sure they're copyrighted.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And it's so much better because the way they've played into like their names of Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
And like if their names weren't Rick and Morty, there would be no show anymore. It's And that latest season is out now, and there's supposed to be like 100 episodes or something like
75, I think.
75.
I think it's 75. I haven't seen any of the new ones yet. They're not on Hulu, which makes me sound like a lazy fuck, but I get tired at 11 o'clock, dude. It's on 11 o'clock on Adult Swim.
Oh, yeah.
I'm tired.
This is why I don't do that.
Yeah.
I go a la carte consumerism, like we talked about the pre-show, and I buy the season on Amazon. Or no, I think this one I got on the PlayStation Store because I was just
And
lazy.
so you get it every week after it comes out?
Yep. As soon as it comes in, it's like I get a notification on my PS4. It's like, hey, new Rick and Morty's here.
He was the first person I ever knew he introduced
Patreon and the whole idea of like crowdsourcing and
subscribing to anybody's anything. When I first started working with Colin, I didn't even know what a podcast was. Like I'd never even heard of one. And then I started to listen to him when we started to talk about him. And he was like, oh yeah, I fucking Dave Rubin and this guy and this guy and this guy. And I, give all these people money. And I was like, what? You won? He was like, yeah, just give them all like $5 a month, and I get all this shit and videos and fucking whatever. Weird. And so, but
Commercial
now
free, baby.
And now I use Patreon. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's
time.
a weird deal.
I'm a patron for a few different gamer podcasts, so I'm a supporter of that. I think it's a cool just answer to a lot of the issues that people have come up with and how creative people make money because it's such a niche market in a lot of ways, and so it's a really creative answer to that. Same as Kickstarter. Kickstarter is in that same vein.
Is that okay? So you say niche, right?
Niche.
Do you know anyone who says like niche?
I know plenty of those sons of niches that say,
and so you don't think that that's correct?
Well,
because I don't know. I've heard
to say niche. I don't think it matters. I'm pretty sure the root of the word is French, so I try to follow suit in that way.
There should be some accent on it.
Niche.
Okay.
So let me ask you this: how do you pronounce? Oh, I don't want to. Well, I'm going to have to say it.
Well,
anyway.
write it down. Write it down.
Wait, we have the technology.
This is fantastic.
We have the technology.
Yeah.
I'm going to spell it wrong, but it's going to figure it out.
Pakistan.
Word.
I dated a girl from Pakistan for a while.
You
then
did?
There you go.
She's very nice, and her family was really cool. It was really
I
awesome.
forget when it was, but we had a conversation about those people that say like Pakistan versus Pakistan.
Yeah.
Or niche versus niche.
Well, I think.
How do you pronounce Iran?
I think I say Iran. I think I say Iran.
It's usually a good rule to do the
Yeah.
when you're talking about countries in the Middle
And
East.
Iran.
and I
Indus
think
Valley.
that
Iran, Iraq.
I don't think that I really hold myself too strictly to either one because I know that for certain I know that I've said Iraq and I know that I've said Iraq. Like I know that I've said both.
Yep.
Just kind of depending on however it comes out that time. So
also in the media, everyone says every different version. It was just this weird thing. So you can never be perfect. You're always pronouncing something incorrect.
So I'm going to fuck with your head real quick
here we
because this was the point somebody made to me about the difference between Pakistan and saying like saying it in like the way they would pronounce it or something like that. Do you know who Angela Merkel is?
yes,
Yes, the chancellor of which nation?
Germany.
But they call it Deutschland.
Oh,
So we don't call it
Deutschland.
Deutschland, right? It's weird. It's very weird. That's all I'm saying. It's just a weird thing. And the ones that
is
kind of
weird.
cherry pick to choose how they pronounce it, I don't know what it is, but it's interesting.
Is that so as to further separate themselves from, like the whole Holocaust thing, or like?
well, no, Spain calls itself España,
Yeah.
but we
we
call
don't.
it
Well,
Spain.
I just mean in this case in particular. Like I know in the case of Germany, like do they call themselves Deutschland because they're like we just don't even we just won't even bring that up.
I think they were Deutschland back with when World War II started anyway.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's been Deutschland since it became Germany. It was.
I guess that's what I get for just
you
being
came here to podcast.
ignorant
You never
American.
expected to learn.
I always expect to learn. I always expect to learn. You should always assume that someone you're talking to knows something that you don't.
Listen,
that's
Amen.
my go-to.
Yeah.
100% of the time I'm talking to anybody, I'm just assuming that they know more than me, which I feel leads to a lot of the insecurity in me, is that I understand how much I don't know about every single topic, even the topics I claim to know about. And so it makes me feel like, oh man, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
There's always someone who knows something more than me, so I must not know anything.
Well, and I just knew coming into this that you knew a lot of shit. So I totally expected to, not that I have like, you know, I'm like, I expect to learn at least 20 things while I'm here today.
All right.
But I expected to walk away with at least like one, hey, Jordan, guess what the fuck I learned from Michael Barker today was this, you know?
The first thing you learned was that Deutschland was
for
just forever.
Since before the Holocaust. Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah. Since before that.
Since that whole Prussian Empire thing.
Yeah, I'm interested to know exactly.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know exactly when that became a thing.
Yeah, me too.
Forever. Caesar was walking. It was the Romans that called it Germania.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna figure it out for sure, like a date, you know. And I'm gonna go ahead and
Julius Caesar on the horn right now.
No. I'll just I'll use the Google. I'll try and do some solid investigating. I'll make sure that I post the answer on my Twitter. You can find that at Salt of the Street, right? And you can also find me on my Instagram at alpaca_Donovan. And Colin has his personal social media. He's at Big Bird Offie on both of those things. We have our Salt of the Streets Instagram. That's at Salt of the Streets. Our Facebook at Salt of the Streets. Our YouTube at Salt of the Streets for all of our videos. You can find all that on saltofthestreets.com. Do you have anything that you want to throw out there? Any social media at all?
I just want to say that was an amazing segue. That friggin' just swept me off my feet.
Thank you.
I'm at Be a Better Game Master on YouTube. And the stuff that we're going to talk about, the gaming stuff that I work on, primarily happens at Absolute Tabletop, which is on absolutetabletop.com, or on Facebook, the Absolute Tabletop official group. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that.
Tell all your friends.
Yeah, tell
Do
your
it.
friends.
So there you go.
Because if you're not tabletop gaming, you're layman.
Yeah, you're tabletop layman.
All right.
He thought about that before now.
I've been working on it all night. That would be sad. So,
Whatever,
but before
man.
we have a lot of fun, let's
Some
talk
dad
about
jokes
something
you got to plan out. You know, that's being a dad. I can tell you.
Oh, yeah.
You sometimes you just think of it and you're like, man, when this particular circumstance happens, I got a fucking fire dad joke that I'm going to spit out. And you just wait. You just sit on it. You know. So
that's a good call.
yeah, it
Because
just
dad jokes,
happens.
You can do that because they're all so short and cheesy. You just hold on, you just stack them in your pocket. And when it's ready, pull them out.
And I can promise.
Rip it out.
I'm only 24, so it truly is like some people are born with it, you know, but other people it's like just as soon as you become a dad, it just something turns on that they just start coming to you. You know, I don't know what it is, but
It's fucking dadism. How dare you?
it's good. No, I don't. I like it, and it's like once I'm a dad, I can say that.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm allowed to prejudice myself. You know.
You're in a new protected class. You get to hang out. You get to talk shit on the dinks.
One more slice of the intersectional pie that belongs to me. So just go ahead and eat that.
You got to claim your territory where you can, man. It's a fucking rough world out there.
It's good to spawn.
So, yeah, we got to talk about this Navy SEAL cat
Okay.
because I don't know. I've been looking into this for, basically since it's been happening. It's been real weird to watch unfold. There's some, especially from my military background, knowing how things work in more or less, you probably call it the military judicial system, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I mean, it's real cut and dry. There's not a lot of this crazy, weird legal loopholes and shit like that. It's, there's a few books that you need and that's it.
Well, and because of that, this happened relatively quickly. Like this whole court martial, right? And I was thinking about that on the way here. That I think that a lot of people might wonder, like, why this happened so quickly. And that's, I think, a good point to make. That it's because it wasn't through the standard judicial system. This happened through the military judicial system, and it was a court martial, and so it was super quick. Like I
think we're talking about a meeting that happened in 2018. Where like a lot of these allegations came out.
So just in between, at the end of 2018, I think, and now the whole trial and everything has happened, and all of this stuff afterwards that we're going to get into. So that's why it happened so quickly, was because of court martial instead of the standard American judicial system.
Leave it up to military to get things done judiciously.
Yes. So
more than one level.
So this man's name is a Navy SEAL, Eddie Gallagher. I believe that he's still a chief now. Correct.
Yes, thanks to the president.
Yes. And so we are obviously going to get into that. And so last year there were allegations that were raised about him from other people that served with him that he had, shot innocent people from a sniper post on more than one occasion. And the one instance that he actually was found guilty of was that he had stabbed and killed an ISIS fighter that was like 15 years old that they had found. And I don't think that he was
acquitted of that.
Yeah. It was
ultimately
the attempted murder, right? Is it? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And essentially, I mean, it's important to understand that when a soldier overseas commits murder during a wartime theater, that is considered a war crime. And so you're hearing these things thrown around there like he committed war crimes, he's on trial for war crimes, and that is technically true.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not like he was over there like, mowing down whole towns and shit like that. This is a very different situation.
Right. There were a few accusations at times where he had fired rockets into villages without seeming, without there really seeming to be a reason, and had ordered other people to do so. But he, again, wasn't found guilty of those things. These were things that he was charged with, but that he was not actually found guilty of.
Yeah.
Acquitted
on all charges except for the one.
Right. And so this, this ISIS fighter that he was accused of stabbing and killing, right? Mm-hmm. He then posed with a picture that he sent to some other SEALs that he served with. And that's, as you're saying, is what he eventually was found guilty of. Yep. And so after that happened, he was demoted. And then shortly afterwards, by order of the president, his rank was restored to chief. Right. And after that happened, there was discussion between the Secretary of the Navy. What is this guy's name, Colin?
Richard Spencer.
Yes. Okay. Weird as fuck, right?
Richard V. Spencer.
That's weird, right? Am I not the only one that thinks that that's weird? Because if you don't know,
it's a name.
Richard Spencer is also the name of a man who is a radical white supremacist. And
some would say the founder of what we refer to as the alt-right now.
So I was really confused about that at first and had to look up a picture of him and be like, this...
It's not the guy.
How fucking random, right? Just how random that they happen to share the same name.
In 20 years, there will be no Richard Spencers anymore. People have stopped naming their kids that.
Yeah. It's just
for good reason. Which is a shame. It sounds pretty nice. It's a solid name.
Yeah, we're talking specifically about the sibilance of it and the format and the syllables. Yeah, I'm in.
Dick Spencer. Come on.
Exactly.
A Dick Spencer is way too close to dispenser for me to say that.
Oh, what kind of dispenser?
I know.
Is it a dispensary? Because if that's the case, I'm probably down.
They got those all over the place. Yeah,
a few, just a few, like one on every corner.
The last time, so I brought a joint here, right? And when I went there was a sign in the store that said, "Plan to get high, plan to get a ride." And it was, an ad for DUIs. And I thought that was really cool. And I don't think that I've seen that in any other stores. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was rad. You know what I'm saying? Public safety at the bottom. It was DUI stops are increasing because that's a huge, it's a problem all over America, but here particularly it's a rampant problem. People are getting fucked up and then driving home. People are getting killed all the time here.
Oh, yeah.
All over the road, there's, the white crosses and stuff like that and bicycles and shit that are painted white on the side of the road for people that have been hit. Yeah.
On the way from your house to mine, there's 2 white crosses of people that I knew in high school that are now dead.
Yeah.
And they have white crosses on the side of the road now.
And there's
That's fucking wild. There was 2 head-on collisions on this road this week.
Yeah.
One of them was fucking sounded terrifying. I was outside with the dog taking her out and just heard this quick little skirp smash.
Yeah.
And it was fucking loud, man.
Just a few weeks ago when we went shooting, we were going on Clear Creek and we saw the aftermath of an accident where we found out that somebody had died there. That there was someone got T-boned on Clear Creek. And yeah. I'm saying that shit happens all the time, and I don't
road.
Yeah, and I don't believe that was
really
a DUI. I'm not trying to paint
though.
These as instances of, but we're just these are just
dangerous road. Really fun to drive, though. I think we've found some part of the problem.
I like to drive. I like to pretend it's Gran Turismo, and I just sit there and hug the turns. What's this lane business? I don't need that.
That enormous truck out there that you saw. That's
yeah. That's my 4x.
Yeah. So Richard Spencer, Secretary of the Navy Richard Spencer, not white supremacist Richard Spencer. There was then discussion between him and it was Colin Green, right? He's the rear commander, right? The rear admiral, yeah, and he is the one that tried to initiate the process that was the Trident Review Board, right? To try and see about getting what is called the Trident from this Navy SEAL. And so it's the pin that they wear that they get at the end of the BUDS training that symbolizes that they're a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
And so
once you get that, you can wear it forever.
Right.
There's certain things like in the Coast Guard that was like that. We had a thing called a cutterman's pin. So, in the Coast Guard, we don't have ships, we have cutters. Depending on the size and all that. And so you serve on board a ship, on board a cutter, which is a certain size of ship, the bigger ones. You do that for X amount of years and you do a bunch of different like seamanship, specialty little things. You get the senior people to sign them off and you get to throw that on your uniform forever. Once you do it for, I think it's like 6 years you spend on ships. And that's like not a thing. You'd be surprised in the Coast Guard. That's not a thing that a lot of people get.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of pride associated with that. And so when you're talking about the SEAL's Trident pin, it's that times like 10,000.
Right.
To Navy SEALs. I mean, these are the most elite, cream of the crop, like the top tier of the top tier.
Well, and he's a chief in the Navy SEALs. So he's been doing this for a long time. I believe he's been in the military for 19 years. And I think it was 6 years into his service that he went into the BUDS training and became a Navy SEAL. So he's been, for the last 13 years, he's been a Navy SEAL. He's done more than one, tour overseas. I mean, he's highly decorated from what I understand. Yeah. And very experienced. I mean, he's gone through the sniper training. He was a medic. I mean, he's, from what I understand, a very efficient Navy SEAL outside of these charges here. And there's a lot of, I sent you a lot of articles, Michael Barker, and I've got, I think, 7 articles up here that are from different sources that all say very different things. There are a lot of people that say that he was an amazing person and would never do anything like this. I mean, his wife and his brother, the whole time that he was in jail, were all over the media talking about that, he would never do anything like this. This is ridiculous. And there are other people, the people who reported this, that served with him, that say that they witnessed him do these things, and so
that's the thing I want to know a little bit more about is what the people alongside him and served under him and served with him said, because I feel like that should hold weight, but or maybe not hold weight, but it interests me. I want to know what they...
And they are ultimately going to do that review. That's about... It's basically a group of the Navy SEAL peers that get together and form a committee to...
It is going to happen now?
That's, from my understanding, that's where we're at this point. Everybody's just kind of be like, I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Right.
Done with this whole thing.
So before we get into the actual charges, we should say that, like, at the end of the process, that the Rear Admiral Colin Green was trying to initiate the process of the Trident Review Board to see whether or not his Trident would be taken away from him, right? He was also intending on retiring. So this was essentially to see whether or not he would be able to retire a SEAL or some other different rank within the Navy, right? And so after finding out about this, the president decided that he didn't want this Trident Review Board to happen and that Eddie Gallagher was going to retire with his Trident regardless of what anybody had to say within the Marines, right? And after this happened...
Navy SEALs.
Yes, sorry. I did that all week talking to Colin.
Which is funny because they can be from any service.
Right.
But once they're a Navy SEAL, they're part of the Navy.
Right. And I just keep... Yeah, I apologize. He is a Navy SEAL. That was just a slip of the tongue. Because regardless of how I feel about his personal charges, at this point, he is still holding the rank of Chief in the Navy SEAls, and I feel that he deserves the respect of me calling him that. I don't, like I said, regardless of how I feel about whatever, these allegations are, I don't.
And I need
as
to correct
of now,
myself. I was mistaken earlier. So his review process never really happened. They canceled that. The president tweeted the whole thing, and we'll get into this later, but like, the problem here, the reason this is even a news story is because the president decided to insert himself into the situation.
Yeah.
But he had made a tweet right after the Navy secretary was fired, or right before, around that time. about how the fact that he is going to keep his trident,
Yes.
fired the Secretary of the Navy, so on and so forth. But the Navy did also cancel the reviews of the 3 other people involved in this process as well. So they are not going to have to go through the review board either. Lieutenant Jacob Porter, Lieutenant Commander Roberts Bryce, and Lieutenant Thomas McNeil.
Yeah.
So they will not be going through that process. So it sounds like they're going to be able to keep their tridents and all that. And it sounds like he's keeping his too. But he's also chosen to submit his resignation or his retirement.
Yeah. And it's the Navy Secretary Richard Spencer, you said, that was fired, correct? Because he was fired by the Secretary of Defense. It's Don McGahn, right? Is that who this is? Then?
Yeah. No.
No.
Acting,
Don. Yeah.
It's like Eps something. Shit. I'm going to have to look it up. He's the
Esper. Thank you. Don McGahn is ordered that he has to, or was found in the courts that they said that he had to testify.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting my topics mixed up here. So anyway, Esper ended up firing the Secretary of the Navy because he allegedly, I believe he went to the White House and said that he was willing to try and kind of insert himself in the Trident Review Board to ensure that Eddie Gallagher was able to retain his trident. And after that happened, the acting Secretary of Defense said that he could no longer trust his discretion and fired him, right? So there's now, I believe, an acting Secretary of the Navy. I don't know what his name is, but that was just like last week that he went in there. So
the Secretary of the Navy got fired by the Secretary of Defense.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
by Trump's Secretary of Defense.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Acting.
Yeah. The acting.
Because pretty much all the cabinet level members are acting at this point. There's very few that are confirmed. But, which is an interesting conversation all in itself. But Mark Esper,
we've covered
Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, we've covered quite a bit of turnover within the Trump administration in the higher ranking cabinet spots.
Mm-hmm. It's been a lot.
Yes. Yeah, certainly more than normal. Turnover is not abnormal by any means, especially in that high of an office with that many people working there. But that much turnover in that high of offices,
it's usually
is
like
weird.
In a standard 4-year presidency, they usually have a rollover once around the midterms. So around 2 years in, the start of their third, they usually clean house a little bit, change it up, and then move forward. But
capture some voters.
Yeah.
And I believe this is the third Secretary of Defense, actually.
I think so.
Yeah, I believe that there was an original one, and he quit. He resigned, and then there was an acting that also resigned. So I believe that Mark Esper is the third Secretary of Defense that has been within the Trump administration, if I'm recalling that correctly.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah.
I'm curious. General Mattis?
Yeah, who replaced Mattis? That's the name.
Probably Esper.
So it's just two?
One more before.
That's what I think too. I believe that there was...
it was fucking Michael Flynn. Wasn't he the Secretary of Defense?
Oh, yeah. Michael Flynn was the first one. Yes, Michael Flynn was the first one. Yes, and then it was General Mattis.
So the acting United States Secretary of Defense, Patrick Shanahan, preceded... How did we get Jim Mattis?
Preceded by Jim Mattis. Okay.
Maybe he was his defense.
Well,
I don't know. I got to figure out.
Go to click on Jim Mattis and go to preceded him.
Oh, crap. I just got rid of it.
You did the thing.
Oh, that's terrible.
I do the thing all the time. When you accidentally click the X on the tab.
It's so close.
It is.
It's not
so
okay.
Close.
All right. Patrick Shanahan. Yeah, replaced Jim Mattis.
But you should read his book. Jim Mattis, General Mattis's book.
I saw that you had that. Was it good?
Oh, man, it's good. I've finished it twice.
Repeated by Ash Carter, proceeded, and he was from 2015 to 2017. Wow. Yeah, that was, and he was appointed by Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So it was just Jim Mattis, and then he was succeeded, saying by Mark Esper. Okay, this is getting weird. And now we have preceded by acting. So maybe he's the new one while Shanahan was the acting for a little while. You see the problem here? There's so much turnover. It's hard to keep track of.
Michael Flynn was the National Security Advisor.
Damn it.
That's where we're at.
Formerly.
Jesus Christ.
God. And there's so much of it. Like Michael Bolton used to be the defense secretary.
Right.
I think there was one between the two. Who came before Bolton? What was his name? Was it wasn't Tillerson, right? Or was it
No,
Tillerson?
Rex Tillerson
He
was the Secretary of
State.
Yeah, he was the Secretary of State before Pompeo.
Good Lord. And then, Pompeo came in. Man, who was...
So there you go.
Yeah,
This,
either way.
if anything, further illustrates the point, even if we don't have all the names correctly, that of all these different offices, they've all had at least one turnover before we've hit the possible midway point of a 2-term presidency, which is a little bit strange.
It's just it's a big outlier in terms of previous presidents.
Yes,
a big outlier.
which is
for whatever reason, like you said, that's a podcast on its own. That's maybe a 2-parter.
Yeah. That's a good blog post coming up right there.
So anyway, Mark Esper, right? He ended up firing the Secretary of the Navy because he offered to attempt to insert himself in the Trident Review Board of Eddie Gallagher to try and make sure that he was able to retain his Trident. So the original allegations, as we were talking about earlier, were, that he had on more than one occasion from a sniper post shot innocent people in, I believe they were talking about it was in Afghanistan that he did that, or somewhere in the Middle East, so as to cover myself.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, somewhere, in one of these.
East of Iran or west of Iran.
Yes.
And that's the sad thing is you could say that. You're like, oh, yeah, it's one of those conflict zones.
Isn't it? Yeah.
There's so many of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, of course, the allegation that he was actually found guilty of or the crime that he was actually found guilty of was taking the picture with the dead body. And then he, sent it and there was conversations and all this stuff that surrounded it. And the reason, from what I understand, that he wasn't found guilty of the murder was during the trial, there was a witness who was offered, not amnesty,
A pardon?
Immunity. Thank you very much.
Ooh, I've seen Law and Order.
All I could think was protection, which is essentially what it is, but there's, immunity. So, was offered immunity for his testimony. And when he was testifying, he said that he had killed this ISIS fighter because he plugged up his air hose. That's you know what I'm saying? That after he had been stabbed, they were doing first aid because he was bleeding out and he covered up his air tube so that he would die. And so that's why Eddie Gallagher was not found guilty of this murder charge of the ISIS fighter. Which was obviously unexpected until it happened at the trial. And so there are still many people, including the original accuser, that say that he did do this, regardless of this testimony during the trial, that Eddie Gallagher was the person that killed this ISIS fighter, as well as doing these other things that he was originally accused of. So,
which automatically, by default, in a judicial hearing of any kind, anybody says that they did something, you're automatically acquitted at that point. It's like, well, I'm sorry.
There's
the jury
your
said
reasonable doubt, right?
You're out.
Right.
Enough reasonable doubt that it's all over.
Right. And apparently there was conversation before his actual trial of doing a Trident Review Board to try and take his Trident away. And Colin Green was talked out of it by, I don't remember who it was that talked him out of it. Probably just from some higher officers, because if he was to show up without a Trident, then it might show some type of bias within the system of the military towards what he had done, so that the jury might think that they were leaning a particular way and it might influence their opinion. Yeah. So they waited until after the trial, or were trying to wait until after the trial to do the Trident Review Board, which, like I said, doesn't sound like it's going to happen now.
Yeah. And at this point, that's kind of where the story ends. And really, it got really weird because due to the fact that the president inserted himself into this situation, the media followed. And has blown this up because this is not something that the nation should see, in my eyes. I mean, you got to understand that, a career Navy SEAL like that who's been deployed, I think it was 8 times. Yeah. Something like that. There's it's a tragedy that it happens and that stuff like that does happen and exist. And if you're even the slightest student of history, you will realize that if you compare where we're at today and the war crimes that do happen in today's world compared to the war crimes that took place in any conflict,
the firebombing of Dresden,
point.
Germany,
yes, and even in Vietnam, bombs, this is something that happens during war, and I don't Like, I am real hard pressed to cast too much shade on this guy. I don't want to do that because he has had a lifetime of living in really terrible, combat zones and is exposed to all this stuff. And who knows? There's only one person. There's a very select few people, we'll say, that can understand how he can relate in that situation, what his mental state might have been. Can you imagine 8 deployments in combat zones as a SEAL, the guys doing the work? I don't want to fault him too personally on that. There is a military judicial system set up to handle these things, which would have done something, which would have all gone through without the press's attention if the president didn't insert himself into the situation. And it would have gotten solved. Nobody would have heard about it. Who knows what would have happened? I have a feeling that, he probably would end up losing his trident at that point, but you never really know. And I just don't think it's weird. It's a really kind of, it's a gray quagmire of diciness to start throwing shade into this situation in my eyes, because I have no concept of what that dude has been through and how many of his friends have been brutally fucking murdered by these people that fight against them. And he has one of, it's a human situation that does happen. You can't stop it from happening. It's not good when it happens. We don't endorse it when it happens, but we do pride ourselves now in having a professional military that doesn't fall prey to that kind of things, but we're all still fucking human. So it's a really weird situation. And it's not good. The Secretary of the Navy, Mr. Spencer, formerly now, he talks about that good order and discipline being lost and stuff like that in his resignation letter. And that is, unfortunately, the military judicial system is not forgiving in a lot of ways. And when you have career soldiers that might end up getting in these situations, it's handled pretty harshly, usually. And if there's, and if you lose your trident pin right at the end, it's like maybe they'll do that officially, and then on the way out the door and stuff like that, whoever the hell's leaving the tribunal might, give you a handshake and give you your pin back or something. Who knows? Mm-hmm. The military is a very weird place, and these people that basically live in these life or death combat zones. I mean, it's really, how do I put it? It's hard living in the civilian world to even pretend like you can understand what those people go through. And it's hard to put our moral judgments on those people that live through those.
Still, it doesn't.
Because who knows? You're not who you are in the civilian world when you're on the battlefield.
And you're never that person again once you see the battlefield. And that's why I wanted to ask you a question, Colin, because you're the military guy.
Never seen a battlefield.
But still, it does. Being on the inside in a way,
it's an important question for me. And first, though, I think that not always. Well, actually, what I will say first is that later on, we're going to talk about a lot of companies that I work with and for and whatnot. And I should say that my opinions right now are my own opinions.
Yeah.
Anyone else's.
Absolutely.
I disagree with a lot of people all the time on stuff, people that I work with every day. So,
and this is a place you should feel comfortable to say whatever you want.
I'm a gunner.
Just absolutely whatever you want is totally fine.
Cool.
Don't worry about.
I can't break anything though, right? I can't
don't break anything. Colin likes all this stuff. It's a very well designed studio.
So people would be like, you could go viral. Assault on the Streets podcast. But I think in a lot of ways, anger creates war crimes. Anger and being forced into a traumatic, horrifying experience. And different units, you can look at different units in history and see that units that are exposed to more of those horrors tend to accumulate those issues.
Yeah.
And Dan Carlin in Hardcore History mentions that
speaking my language,
that the distance a person is away from the person they are killing changes them differently. There are people who drop bombs that on multiple people, or artillery who fire from miles away and take lives. They are affected differently than someone who's right in the middle of the thick of it. Mm-hmm. And that, just to create this idea that, these things happen out of this weird meshing of horrifying experiences. This reminds me of Abu Ghraib. Abu Ghraib, back when it was in Afghanistan, it was very soon after 9/11, very soon after the invasion of Afghanistan. Abu Ghraib was a prison that housed Al-Qaeda and I believe Taliban leaders. And they were, the troops that were there were taking pictures of themselves with these people doing, holding, like being shocked or in strange positions or in precarious.
Stripping them naked.
Yeah, stripping them naked and
yeah.
whatnot. And once you take a picture, and this is something Jocko Willink said on his podcast one time, which was amazing. He said, you take that picture and you create enemies.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing Gallagher did, is he posed with that kid in a picture and he created enemies that we are going to be fighting for at least 20 more years.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is leads me to the question I was going to ask you, because you're right. The only reason this is in the nation's eye right now is because Donald Trump jumped in, and anything Donald Trump does,
the media follows.
Yeah. It's like, I would say at least most.
Especially something that's inherently controversial in itself.
Yeah.
You know, they'll follow anything he says, but if this is already a controversial thing, as
If
soon
it
as
bleeds, it
anyone,
leads.
if anyone finds out about this as it is,
Yep.
if you happen to read the Navy Times or whatever, then you're going to read about this and be like, well, that's kind of fucked up. Like, I don't agree with this, but
Speaking of the
but
Navy
as soon as the president talks about it, then everyone is going to know about it. Yeah.
So my question for you is, you are the president of the United States. Do you jump in?
Hard no. It's not your place. Now, unfortunately, you need to let, and this is Trump's biggest downfall, is he does this with everything. He feels like he wants to run the company.
Yeah.
Whereas in a normal CEO role or in a normal executive leadership role, you do not ever insert yourself into the day-to-day. Ever. But he likes to do that because he's a micromanager who likes to make himself feel important and lead in the way he thinks it is. And yeah, no, he should never have inserted himself. If he wanted to look into this and he wanted to pardon the guy and all this good stuff, you can do that on the DL. Even as Trump, you can do that on the DL. This whole thing could have happened if you didn't tweet about it, if you didn't talk about it. Mind you, he does have such a leaky administration. It may have come out.
It's bad.
But there would have been a right way to do that if he wanted to do that. But as the executive, I think, no, your military, you have a judicial process laid out for it to work and run on its own. You have a Secretary of the Navy who is in your cabinet, who you can communicate with, and he can communicate to you. And then underneath him, there's a whole chain of command and a whole bureaucratic, spider web that is built to handle this situation. You do not need to get involved here.
Right. So something
that's where I'd be.
Thank you.
So something you said earlier, Colin, was you were saying that you didn't want to really pass judgment on this guy for the things that he had done, right? And I think that it's very fair for all the reasons that you stated, right? That that we've not experienced the things that he's experienced. I think it's fair that as standard civilians, we don't really want to pass judgment on someone like that. Yeah. But is
it wrong? Yes.
But I think that it's important to know that it's the people that served with him that were over there that reported these things. They're the ones that said that it was inappropriate, that said that it was out of the ordinary and that he shouldn't be doing those things, right? Yeah. And not just as someone who was the same rank as them, but who was their commanding officer, Oh, yeah. He's their superior. And so that's part of the reason that they reported these things, right? So it's not... Certainly we can sit here and talk about how we feel about it, but it wasn't us that was or a civilian that was dictated. It wasn't a reporter who was there that saw it and said, that's really fucked up. He shouldn't be doing that. It was people that were serving with him that probably haven't done the same amount of time or the same things that he did, but they still were there. They've still done at least that one tour with him.
Who do they report that to? If it's their superior officer, who do you go to?
I mean, in the SEALs, who knows? But you probably go to whoever your boss's boss is.
Okay.
You just skip one level of the chain.
Right.
I've had to do on occasion, which is
that's dangerous.
Not fun to get into.
Not at all, man. That's
and you better know you're fucking right. Mm-hmm. But I will say, like on that note, yes, that did happen and somebody did report it, and it should
multiple people,
and it should have gone through this process untainted.
Yeah.
And who knows what the outcome would have been? Maybe there's a good old boy system built into it, and you never know, man. As a SEAL who served for 20 years, he might have saved America's ass 100-fold before this one thing happened.
And I'm not.
How much can you
remove the bias from it if you are a service person sitting
and
there
who knows?
and judging? Yeah.
And if, like I said, he's getting out anyways. He's, the military has a way of drumming people out in some fashion if they don't want you there.
Yeah.
And
right. So,
if this was the case, that would have happened. And whatever would have happened, trident or no trident, it's as far as him getting out of the military, I don't think anything would have changed. He would not have been in. He might have been asked to retire. They might have said, if you don't retire,
he would have been a lower rank.
Yes.
I mean, he wouldn't be a chief anymore.
Yes.
Because he was demoted because of what he had done with the picture, what he was found guilty of in the picture.
Yep.
And when you're talking about the system that exists in the military, right?
Yeah.
Part of that system, whether it's right or not, led to someone saying something different once they had been given immunity than they said before they were given immunity,
Yeah.
So who knows what's the true statement? Because when you're making a statement, you also have to swear that's true, and you don't have a hand on the Bible, when you're talking to a JAG officer or something like that. But when you're sitting in the courtroom, you've sworn on a Bible. So you could certainly say that there's maybe a little more weight behind the testimony in the courtroom, but he also swore at a time before that that didn't happen. There was also talk afterwards of retaliation discussions from Eddie Gallagher and the officers that serve with him and the other people that serve with him. I mean, that's not good. No. That's very not good. I mean, when you have people that are doing what they think is their job, right? Is reporting something that they think is not fitting of a service member. Yep. And they're now looking at possible retaliation for being essentially a whistleblower, right? For things that they don't think are correct, right? And that's not me that's judging that. That's another service member, multiple service members that said they don't feel that that's behavior fitting of a Navy Chief SEAL.
Yep. And I would have liked this process to have gone through without any outside interference, and it would have handled itself. And regardless of whether he kept his trident, which is like the big story that this whole thing's been revolving around, is whether or not he's getting out with full honors and all this thing or not. But it would have been handled. I have faith in the military judicial system is very black and white.
Yeah.
You did it or you didn't do it. Punishments, on the other hand, get a little iffy, but it would go down on his record. It would be there. He'd found guilty, done, and then you did whatever your punishment was. It would have resolved itself in a, quote unquote legal fashion. But, like I said, I'm not willing to, it's bad. We've talked about it before. We said it before. It is bad. The whole thing is bad. But am I going to let it ruin my day? Am I going to, think that he's a total piece of shit?
Right.
I'm just going to kind of go, okay, well, it sounds callous and stuff. And I'm like, man, that's pretty shitty, but, it'll get handled.
I feel it. I already told you. I mean, I know I've obviously that this, if any of these things if any of these things are true, right? That's sick shit, right? That's sad, right? It's fucked up, but I also am sitting here telling you that I'm going to continue to call him Chief Eddie Gallagher because that's the rank that he continues to hold in the military. Yep. I find myself in a very strange position, right? Where I have high enough respect for the people who serve in the military and our military as a whole, that he has done enough time and done enough shit for our country that I feel he still deserves my respect to call him Chief Eddie Gallagher as long as he maintains that title, you know?
And even if he did get demoted and his demotion held, right, I would still call him, Petty Officer First Class Gallagher.
Right. But I still, at the end of the day, think that even if it's just the picture, the only the thing that he was actually found guilty of that's true, that's still kind of fucked up,
Yeah.
I understand
that I have no idea what the mindset is of somebody who's done any of the shit that he's done, Yeah. So it's, again, not something that I'm gonna.
And we do want.
It's not a hill that I'm going to die.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate to see things like that when our military
is supposed to kind of hold the role of like being above shit like that.
Because the world sees you. The world sees what you post, what you pictures that you take. And we're the world sees our democratic debates. They see how we handle our process,
and it's so embarrassing. I know.
That hurts me
I see
emotionally.
Democratic, Republican, all the debates.
God.
The world's like, okay, so this is how democracy is run, with a commercial break every 5 minutes to advertise for the prescription.
I promise, world, that's not really us.
They say 30 seconds, but talk for 2 minutes.
Hopefully there's some wavelength, in some TV or radio in Pakistan that's listening to us right now. And a translator or two.
Definitely not in Iran. They cut the internet off. But yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's a weird area for people to kind of, it's a weird quagmire to wander into. I mean, I would have liked it if it's just nobody knew about it. It just was handled.
Yeah.
Because regardless, you don't want people in the military posing with dead bodies. We're better than that.
Right.
Have to be.
Whether or not we like it, if we are still involved in the global, conflict zones around the world, like we need to at least act professional.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can't have any blemishes at all because it's already kind of on a fucking razor's edge. I mean, you got to be over there. You got to be clean.
Yep.
But unfortunately, humans are humans, and it's going to happen. So it's a weird sitch. It's a weird sitch.
A weird sitch, and that's your soundbite. Sound of the street soundbites. Weird sitch.
We've got 2 or 3 little ones that we start the show with.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We've got a nice opening theme that was done by a local rap group called Upper Left.
Yes, I know. I love that, man. I could tell because I'm like, where did they get this rap song that drops Salt of the Streets by name?
Yeah.
Like, wow.
It's sick. They did a fantastic job. Yeah.
Flows too. Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Micaiah.
What's the rapper's name?
Micaiah. Yep. Mac Ray's is with the name that he raps under.
Dope.
But the group is the Upper Left, just Upper Left, not the Upper Left. Upper Left. They make really good music. So Denzel 2 a.m. does most of the singing. And then RJ. Yeah, or Denzel's it's fucking incredible, his voice. RJ and then Elijah does some rapping, and then also Micaiah. So they're fantastic. And they make like most of their own music as well. They produce most of their own music. Micaiah actually made that beat. So yeah.
I majored in music production. That's what I got my bachelor's degree in.
Really?
Yeah, I did. And so that's what's really cool is that the technology, again, we talked about Patreon and Kickstarter a little bit earlier, privatizing and stuff like that. It used to take $10,000 and a label to get in the studio. Yeah. And now it takes a laptop and a microphone. Yep. And laptops come with a microphone almost always. So, all of a sudden the power is back in the hands of the creators. And so you get people like that who can make their own tracks and help their own podcasts and stuff like that. And so there's this whole wave of completely independent content of people to express their beliefs, their music, all of it, their knowledge. It's one of the benefits. It's one of the boons with the technological revolution.
There's no shortage of, the new breed of SoundCloud rappers that people that get famous off of putting music on SoundCloud. Yep. And it just is good enough that enough people find out about it and share it that they get it signed to a rap label. Like you're saying, it's just, it's that easy.
If they do that, like that's right. They don't even need to do that half the time. You start a Patreon, some kind of subscription thing. You just start putting your music out. I don't know how Spotify works, but like eventually I'm sure there's some kind of payout.
On Spotify.
We're on fucking Spotify. Yeah,
I know. Like I ain't seen no Spotify money yet. I mean, so I don't know
even
if there's some kind of threshold.
Of a penny. Fractions of a penny.
Like we're not sending you a check.
Because it's per listen. How many times are people going to listen to your podcast more than once on Spotify?
And the fucked up thing is, compare that to the numbers that Twitch puts out. For people that get 15 to 20 regular subscribers on Twitch, you still get a paycheck every month.
What?
Yes, because once you got to hold this certain level.
Colin, why are we on Twitch?
We could be doing this podcast on Twitch if you wanted to.
Well, so next time, whoever upgrades their phone next,
there you go.
Then we'll have another phone. We'll have one recording their YouTube video and one that's live streaming to Twitch.
I'm sure there's an app you can get that would allow you to do both simultaneously.
I would like to think
like 8 cameras.
They make a device called a TriCaster that allows you to do such a thing, but those are expensive as balls.
Yeah,
so,
and honestly, all we really need to do that again, thanks to the modern age, like you don't even technically need a TriCaster. For the most part, we can run it off a voice meter through a computer. And all I need to do is get another fucking beefy PC, and then we'll be fine.
Interesting.
And we'll totally do that. We will stream on all sorts of things.
That's kind of cool.
It's totally cool. It would be sweet. Cool,
it's a good thing that you like computers because I fucking hate computers. I can't stand it.
I know.
That's why this is such a terrible laptop, because I'm like, I don't even give a fuck.
It's like it
doesn't
Google,
work.
bro.
I'll just use my phone. I don't give a shit.
Do I get Google? Do I get Google on this computer?
That's all
I
that
got
matters.
a tattoo yesterday, and the artist, I went in there, and it was the first time I saw the design, and I asked to make a change, and he got on his phone and made the change with a stylus, and because every piece of the tattoo was a different layer, and I was just like, man,
That's fucking cool.
I was a millennial. Why don't I know what's going on?
That's cool.
We're like, the problem is we're cutting edge millennials. We're on that first few years.
Yep.
So we still feel detached from our own generation.
Yep.
We can't connect with Gen X, and we can't connect with the newer millennials. We're just kind of like this weird little
With a
gray
bridge
area.
a little bit, yeah.
I mean, we're like part boomer almost at this point.
yeah.
Shit.
I really
suppose a lot
want
of people feel that way.
really want the phone that opens up like this, to an
I
even
saw
bigger screen. So that has a stylus too. That would be helpful for that type of shit,
It would be.
I would way rather take notes off of a larger phone in my hand. Like, I don't want to carry on an iPad, but if it could be a phone like this that I could then flip open and then just write shit in with a stylus, I would way prefer that. Like, I would like that a lot.
Well, there's
Are
a
you looking at
problem.
this
I
or
love
am I-
your notebook. I just love that notebook so much.
Thank you.
It's a
my
solid
grandma got it for me for Christmas. My family
Describes all of our books. So this is actually Dax.
yeah.
And then my grandma got this for
Oh,
me.
that's amazing.
I think 2 years ago.
Cool.
So,
I'm gonna steal it.
it's a nice one. It's a navy
Oh,
blue.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. I will say with the take
It's
on your phone thing? Like with a stylus. I like to think of it as like how in robotics there's that uncanny valley term they use, that the difference between like crossing the uncanny valley or the uncanny valley is like where they can make in today's world, mostly the sex robots actually look more human. enough so that
okay.
You can tell there's something wrong with them because they don't cross that, that
Is
threshold.
that like the, what's that test? Turing test.
The Turing test.
Right.
Similar to that?
Right.
Kinda, yeah.
But this is
In
like for
theory.
looks, right? This is just for looks, this uncanny
'cause
valley.
when you look at one of them
Uncanny
sex
valley.
dolls, the real dolls or whatever, they're insanely realistic, but
Right.
they don't look human.
Right.
They're starting to get too close to that uncanny valley where it's really uncomfortable. It looks like a human, but it's not.
But yeah.
But I think there's something to that with the rest of technology. We did okay
I'm
with
so
like
excited for this.
when it first came out with the e-readers, where you can
Okay.
sit there and you can read your books and
The
they made
Kindles
like
and whatnot. Yeah.
And they have them that are like paper white. So it's kind of this weird off-whitish
got,
little thing.
Right,
It looks more.
right.
And then when you do this, like the page corner turns with you and all that.
It's easier to read outside the off-white ones. Yeah.
Yes. But we haven't gotten there yet with taking notes on a glass surface. Like
No.
it doesn't feel like it does when you write something down.
Right.
There needs to be something. We need to get to that
Some
threshold
texture.
where it almost feels the same, like to the point where you can't almost distinguish it from writing on paper, and then everyone will adopt it. But right now, it's just, you write on them fucking signature things on the credit card machines.
Right. The pen slipping and
Yeah.
sliding around
You
all over the
can't
place.
write-
Yeah.
You cannot sign your
Everyone's
name on
signature
that.
looks the same.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, okay. Okay.
I don't even try half the time. It's
My
terrible.
signature is basically a heart monitor. Beep.
Hey, mine too. Jordan makes
We
fun of
should
me
not
for it.
say this on the internet.
Yeah. Oh, well. Good luck.
What's your social security number?
Yeah.
While we're at it,
Just
well,
throw
I might
that
as well
out
just
there.
give them the whole package.
You won't be able to buy anything good.
555.
I have a kid.
555. Oh, there's nothing in this glass. That's highly disappointing.
Sad.
Uh-oh.
You want me to reach over? I got the reach here. If I
Oh yeah, this 6 foot. How tall are you?
I'm 6'8".
6 foot.
No shit.
I am. I feel
Nah,
small.
maybe not.
6'4", and I feel small.
What do you want?
That
Blue or
is
green?
Just whatever you can reach.
Blue or green?
It's a surprise.
I can get up too.
I was actually about to go around the side.
the physics of this whole ordeal was getting way too complicated. Thank you, sir.
Can I try a green? Is that okay? Because I tried the blue. Thank you so much. Load up that shotgun. I want that hat.
I just gave Colin a note.
Oh yeah, the Panama hat
The Panama. I love that.
from Ecuador.
Really?
Actually, well, yeah, which is actually it's a weird little tidbit of like trivia here. The Panama hat is not actually from Panama. Oh. It originally was designed and created in Ecuador for the workers of the Panama Canal, hence the name Panama hat. But the true home of Panama hat is from Ecuador.
Nice.
So
I am studying Latin American studies in school right now, so I'm going to take that information to my profesora.
Oh,
and
hopefully
and
I'm not full of shit.
We'll find out.
No, but I do need to know that because we are going to go out to the East Coast for Christmas and go see the Weiss family, and that's where that factoid came from. And they're all from Ecuador, so they might just have confirmation bias.
Oh, that sounds like a legitimate source.
Yeah,
people
definitely.
from Ecuador.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Carolina's pretty rad.
Surprised.
She's the one that Twitch streams all the time. Little Miss Ecuador.
That's right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's the Twitch girl. She's over here making that money, playing some video games.
Word. So,
Speaking of games.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Michael Barker. We're getting
Video
good.
games. I love how you start with the heavy stuff to really weed out the weak to get to like,
if you want to have fun, you got to work for it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's what it is. I'm sitting here looking at the Onyx Path Publishing website.
great company. Yeah.
And this is a company you write freelance for?
Freelance for. So I'm relatively new at it.
Okay.
Owned by Richard Thomas, I believe, is a creative director, and he's a great guy, great developers. Basically, they're known in part for writing monster books. So you might have heard like Vampire, the Requiem. It's always like Monster, the subtitle. There's Werewolf, the Forsaken, Changeling, the Dreaming, which is actually not their property, but like I've written for Werewolf, the Forsaken. I wrote in their new Night Horrors book, Shunned by the Moon. I wrote some like body snatcher creatures. I should probably say I write tabletop role playing games.
Right. So I was going to say they're games, right?
These are games.
So similar to, but not exactly like Dungeons and Dragons.
Exactly like Dungeons and Dragons, but maybe some different mechanics.
Yeah.
Like the idea is like, if you're a listener and you have no idea what I'm talking about, there are dice that are not 6-sided. There are 4-sided dice, 6-sided, 8-sided, 10-sided, 12-sided, 20-sided, and beyond, depending on the game that you're going for.
All for different shit.
All for different shit. D&D uses the 20-sided die predominantly, while the Onyx Path stuff uses the D10 predominantly, the 10-sided die. So you roll all these D10s.
And really what that does is change up the statistical outcomes of these particular role-playing games.
Because so I'm going to be good for this because I've never played any of these games before,
nice.
not even once. So all of the different sides of the die resemble different options for whatever you're rolling them for, right? Is that correct?
So usually, and this is just a basic,
I'm so excited for this.
Usually you roll a die and your objective is to get more than a certain number.
Okay.
So like if you're going to like, let's say you want to jump over a 4-foot chasm. That's pretty easy. You could, when you start running, you could do that. So you have to roll a D20 and get higher than an 8, maybe.
Okay.
Which is, statistically you're
easier
good to go. Especially when on your character sheet you have like, you're good at jumping, so you have a +4 to your roll.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
I already want to play a game.
Yeah, right?
I already want to play a game.
Let's say there's a chasm that's 10 feet. Okay, now you have to roll higher than a 16. So it makes you think like, okay, do I really want to try to jump that chasm? Do I think that I should?
Or can I try and find another way around?
Exactly. Or maybe I should like take a rope and instead of using strength to jump, I'm going to use my dexterity to try to like tie it around, like lasso some sort of like stone on the other side and swing my way
And
across.
so it's the things that you write are whether or not I can throw a rope or I have to jump, or like, is that always an option to try and do something else? Or is it like you have to jump?
Nope. In this game, there's with a good game master, someone who is running the game, the arbiter of the game, basically they serve as referee and also kind of the creative director. They tell you what you see, what you experience. Because all of this stuff happens in your mind for the most part.
Right. I remember you guys talking about that. I listened to like 2 episodes of your podcast, the Roll Up and Die podcast.
Roll Up and Die,
so
which
I
is
listened to
a hilarious pun that no one will get.
and
Because
so
dice are die.
Right.
And
right.
you roll up a character.
Roll them. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I listened to a little bit of that, and I listened to you guys talking about like about being a good game master.
Yep.
And your co-host, what is his name?
There's Matt from A Fistful of Dice is his YouTube channel, and there's Alex, who's AKA Captain Gothnog. Word indeed.
Word. So I think that it was Matt. On you guys just put out a new episode like the other day, right? So
we actually just put out one. It was our first one in maybe over a year.
Yeah,
because we had a bit of a hiatus because of other stuff that maybe we'll talk.
So
about.
It wasn't that one I listened to, but the one before that, and that I was listening to. And you guys were talking about being a good game master, and that your host was good at setting things up and not like forcing you to feel a certain way, but allowing you to feel something by just setting up the scenario in a good enough way that you're like, oh, that makes me feel this way.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I thought was really interesting.
What's your dream job?
My dream job?
Yeah, your dream job, like you choose right now.
As of right now?
Oh, if I could do anything in the world, it would be to do this, but for like my job. So
like podcasting job.
I mean, to be like a news host, essentially, to have a daily show for like an hour where we broke down the day's news.
Okay.
You know,
where would you live per se? Like, how would you, if you could live anywhere, would you live on the water with like a boat? Would you, how would you get to work? Would you helicopter to work?
No, I would drive, you know.
What kind of car would you drive?
Oh, I would drive like a really nice truck.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, what's a really nice truck? Are we talking Ford Raptor? Are we talking
If I had all the money in the world, I would drive a Ford Raptor.
Elon Musk Tesla truck? Am I the only person in the world who loves the design of that truck?
I don't think they look bad. They're all right.
They're interesting.
It looks like a Halo Warthog, and I'm like,
it does. Yes.
I'm biased because that outside is a truck. That doesn't look like it does all the things of a truck.
Right, but it doesn't look like a truck.
But it looks like my Ford F-350 fucked a DeLorean. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
Yes.
I have a Honda Ridgeline, which is technically a truck, but it's really an SUV.
It's got that
it's
little slant thing in the back.
things on the back. Yeah.
Yep. It's cute.
Yeah. So if I had a bunch of money, I would buy a Ford Raptor because or like a Nissan Titan. I really like a Nissan Titan, you know.
Okay. Well, listen, this is your fantasy, so we're going to give you a Nissan Titan here. Right. Do you have a coin?
Yeah, I can find one.
Go ahead and find a coin for me.
Actually,
I have
right there.
We got a quarter.
Oh, perfect. So I have like a challenge coin in my wallet.
What's your route look like when you're driving to work?
Oh, it's like
this dream job as a podcaster.
Oh, I mean, it would be nice for it to just be like a highway, you know, for most of the way. Yeah, because I'd like to live kind of in the woods, you know. So if it was
like a snaking highway.
Yeah. And then eventually I got to come into like the edge of town for us to have our.
And I would say probably once you get to like the edge of town, that's when traffic starts picking up. That's when it becomes less fun to drive. So you really enjoy just like tearing through these corners.
Yeah.
But so you're driving and you're like, you know what? Screw these lanes. I don't need lanes. But then you see someone doing the same thing you are, going the other direction towards you.
Yeah.
And they're in the middle of the road. What do?
I would get in my lane and honk my horn a bunch of times.
All right, so you get in your lane and you honk your horn.
Maybe take my gun out.
maybe that's maybe. Okay, so here's the deal: you get in your lane and you honk your horn. You're gonna flip this coin.
Oh, geez.
And if it's heads, something happens. If it's tails, something else happens. Heads. Okay, so this person starts swerving because they hear your horn. The horn is heard. This Ford Raptor's got a nice horn. They start swerving away from you, so you're safe. But their car, what kind of car is it?
Oh, I mean, they're probably in a truck too.
They're in an Elon Musk truck. They're in a self-driving Elon Musk.
So the windows are going to break, but it'll be okay.
Exactly. You know what? It starts flipping. The windows break, as you said. And what do? Do you stop to help this person after they're,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So you run up to their person and
I definitely take my gun out just in case.
There's a person in the driver's seat and they're bleeding, and you see what looks like maybe a child in the passenger seat.
Oh, fuck.
What do?
I'll go for the kid first.
Okay, you take the kid and they look like they're fine. Where do you put them?
I put them in my truck.
Okay, so you bring them back to the truck. You go back. I assume you go back to help the
yes,
other person, right?
Yeah.
Next. So I'm a bad game master for telling the character what he did.
He needs
this
help.
is his job.
This is perfect.
Okay, so here's the deal. If you flip that coin again, if it's heads, you succeed in saving this person with CPR. But here's the deal. Because you rescued the kid first and took that time to take them back to your truck, you have to roll heads twice in a row.
Oh, because I waited too long.
Because you waited a little bit of time.
That makes sense.
Heads.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
So we're
Ladies and
looking
gentlemen.
okay. And if I roll tails
Is Donovan's
this time,
decision going to kill somebody?
Yep.
if I roll tails this time, I don't get another chance. I only get 2 chances to roll.
Chest compressions are going. You're starting.
Fuck!
And
Dead.
he flatlines. It's over.
And that kid
nondescript
grows up
person.
an orphan.
Thanks to Donovan.
So we just played a role playing game. It's usually not.
But
as
they're
depressing
alive,
as that.
you know? But at least they're alive.
At least they're alive. The kid's alive. You save the kid.
I'm not an EMT. I'm a podcast host. It's not. I don't,
yeah, exactly. That wasn't my dream job. Although if you had chosen EMT as your dream job, it would have been basically the same scenario. So this is a car accident.
I don't get like a +4 opportunity or something
Because you've podcasted a lot about realistic things such as being an EMT or
I can help them.
defibrillators.
I can at least help them pass on with reality. I'm like, it's all right. You know, you're gonna die.
Yep.
But it'll be okay.
Maybe you
Like, I
adopt the
don't-
kid.
it'll be okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe you
But don't-
adopt the kid.
It's like, what do you
and-
mean it's a fucking okay? I got kids over there.
Like I
You
got,
take care of
but
my
I,
kid,
but I
Donovan.
saved him. But I saved him. I got it. It's all right.
That's a role playing game. We just played a role playing game, but like tabletop role playing games become a little bit more complex when you add more numbers to it. You add dice instead of flipping a coin. But
Much longer, obviously.
yeah, and there are tons of different types of games. There are games I've seen where you play rock paper scissors with the GM to see if you succeed. It's
Really?
they're more goofy and more simple when you get in that direction. There are games when you roll whole handfuls of 6-sided dice and you have to separate them out and such. But yeah, I write stuff for Onyx Path. I'm currently, I just helped write Mummy the Curse, where you play as a mummy that's just risen from the dead and you have like ultimate power to pull down meteors from the sky and stuff.
What?
Yeah, I saw that on their Monday meeting news.
Yes.
My mummy done told me,
mummy
talking
done
about that
told me.
game.
They're so creative. They're a creative team with creating these blogs.
It's so interesting, man.
They have podcasts. The Onyx Pathcast is great. The other stuff that we do is because Wizards of the Coast, who develops Dungeons and Dragons, is generous enough to allow to create the open gaming license, which means that I can write any book I want, basically using their rules, their wording, their terminology, and all I have to do is put that open gaming license in the back or front of the book. And I don't owe them anything. I can, sell it. People can.
That's
I don't
really
get sued.
cool.
It's really cool.
That's
and it
really
helps
cool.
them get customers. Because
Yeah,
someone looks
absolutely.
at my book and they think, well, I need to get Dungeons and Dragons now.
yeah.
So that's mainly what we do at absolutetabletop.com. We create scenarios, adventures, game mastering advice for people to use. We have like 21 supplements right now that people can.
And by supplement,
I mean book. Yeah, book.
That's
or
what they're
PDF.
called. Yeah.
Yeah. Not like
base-
GNC.
I was
Maybe
like,
like
that
a-
was a big shift from books to fucking pills, but all right,
we
let's
got
hear about it.
creatine, we got nitrous oxide.
So like an example of that would be like writing an adventure within the Dungeons and Dragons universe. Is that a supplement?
Sure. And we even create our own universes, our own worlds and such. So like, there are games where you can play in Middle Earth, like Tolkien. There's the Lord of the Rings book here.
Yeah, yeah.
In
Buy
Middle
them
Earth.
on PDF form.
Yes,
That
you
is
can get
so-
the digital form. You can
Really? And then just print them out?
Yep.
Well, yeah, 'cause-
And if you get the real book, you get the PDF for free.
That is so wild. Oh, why?
Hi, Carolina.
Hey,
Sweetheart, we would like you to meet my new best friend, Michael Barker.
Michael Barker. Nice to meet you.
That's his full name. That's his whole name. You have to call him Michael Barker.
Michael Barker.
That's it. Yeah.
Michael Barker.
That's it. That's me.
Jordan's cousin.
Mucho gusto.
Yes.
A pleasure meeting you. Nice having you.
Likewise.
These are actually the godparents to our son also.
Really?
So, yes.
Indeed.
Yeah, these are some of our best friends. Yeah.
Proud
I'm outta here.
godparent of-
Cool. Awesome. Family's fun. That's what I love. We were talking about Thanksgiving in the pre-show, and I forgot to mention this,
Yes.
but
Oh, right.
It's
We
not-
didn't even barely talk about it.
it's not Thanksgiving unless everything is slightly too cramped.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You can't have like 2 people at a small table in a big room and call it Thanksgiving. You have to have like a little bit of like you're touching everyone while you walk through, and your house just
Perfect for it,
nailed
right?
it.
Yeah, I think we had
You had so
22
many
people.
people.
I think we had 22 people there. Yeah.
Man.
That house can hold legally only 20 people.
Yes.
Right? There's
Yeah.
a fire marshal.
Start to get
Call the
past
fire
that, and if a
marshal
cop
next year.
shows up, if you get past that, a cop shows up and he's like, you got to go. Someone has to leave.
I'm
Like,
surprised the
group
top
needs to
story didn't
disperse.
collapse.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is a party now, and it's unacceptable.
Dude, okay, so next Thanksgiving I'm going to do that, and it's like the friendly version of swatting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's having a big ass party, like fire marshal. There's a fire hazard next door. That's a dick move. I would never do that.
On Thanksgiving.
Ruined.
Happy Thanksgiving.
That's for that neighbor that allows his dog to shit on your yard.
No, that's when we become thankful for our swift first responders.
That's right.
Immediately resort to going to that house and kicking everyone out.
Thank God
on
for
a
them.
freezing Thanksgiving night.
Thank God for them.
Oh, man. And I will just say, as from Big Bird Offie here, from the whole Salt of the Streets family, thank you to all you first responders out there that made a huge difference for those people that inevitably try to burn down their house on the holidays.
Or tried to deep fry a frozen turkey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
There's always
man.
one.
I saw a thing on Facebook about some, and I don't remember what state it was or anything, but there was, some lady they were doing Thanksgiving at their house, and she had an oven fire. And the whole meal fucking went up in smoke and all this shit. They came, they put out the fire, everything was fine. And like 4 hours later, they come back. They go back to the firehouse, get their Thanksgiving dinner and stuff that they had made, and bring it back to the house for that family.
No shit.
Oh, yes.
So that's why every single year when EMS asks for more money, I'm like, take my money.
Like,
take my money.
Please.
You guys are too fucking good to everybody.
Yep.
I don't care.
I watch live PD like all the time in the morning while I'm at work, just clips and shit on YouTube. And there was one day where apparently I was feeling exceptionally emotional, and I watched a clip where there was like an old woman who got robbed at a grocery store, and they took her whole wallet out of her cart. And so they took like her EBT card, her food stamps card, and like all this stuff.
Aww.
And so she couldn't pay for her groceries, and so she's in the manager's office talking to the police officer, and, getting the report and everything, and the manager of the store that she was in, Publix, that's where she was at. So shout out Publix, the manager of the store.
Wait, this was in Florida then.
It's probably was in Florida. Live PD's on Florida, Florida's on Live PD all the fucking time. So wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. And so the manager of the Publix paid for her groceries, and let her go. And so she was crying, and then I fucking started to cry while I'm at work, I dropped a tear and I was like, fuck. And then the police officers who were there taking her report bought $100 in gift cards for Publix and then took them to her house after they got off work. And I was like, motherfuck these guys.
Yep.
Crying again. Oh, it was horrible. Yeah. But that type of stuff happens all the time, and those are the things that don't get reported often enough, They just get seen on Facebook.
What do you think
or some
that is?
shit.
Do you think that fear and just sells more than hope?
I think because sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's it. That was the question.
I think because when you watch the news, right? If you watch your local news, you get an hour of, you get 47 minutes of scary shit and then 3 minutes of a puff piece at the end. So you have 10 scary stories that lead up to one happy story at the end to make it seem like it's okay. So you're hearing about 10 other things that were all terrible when only one time a day you're going to hear about this good thing, when there's probably more, good things than bad things that are happening, but it's only the one good thing that's going to be talked about that day.
And that's what I'm wondering about. Maybe because money drives everything.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's just listen, we've tried, those hopeful pieces at the end, though, that's when people turn the TV on.
Right.
So,
what does that say about us?
Do you remember when
I'm very pessimistic. I hope we can talk about that later.
We will.
When we used to listen to the BBC podcast, we would listen to everything but the last 10 minutes because that was a puff piece, and we're like, who gives a shit? We just want to hear about all the turmoil in the whole world. Yeah. But I don't care about the good thing.
Because we were doing show prep and we were not going to talk about the puff piece. So we have an excuse.
This is salt of the streets.
That's right.
I do remember us saying, very explicitly one time, I just don't give a fuck about this last 10 minutes of this podcast.
Especially when it comes after the end, when you're just
yeah, you're like, all right, well, this country's going to shit, and maybe America too. So, I guess we'll just see what happens. So, fuck this happy banana grower in fucking South America somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, the banana growers in South America are not happy.
Well,
we have one species of banana almost left in the world. The main one that you buy, everybody buys at the store, is all the same species, and they're all grown in the same region, and they have a problem with these diseases that these trees get afflicted with.
Okay.
And they're doing their best to try to solve it, but the only fucking banana trees for the bananas that we all know and love are all in this one area, and they're all slightly affected by this disease, and it could go haywire real fucking quick.
It's time to GMO some bananas.
Yeah. And then, dude,
I'll eat GMO'd bananas. I don't care. My baby loves bananas.
Yeah, dude. That's the future. Yeah.
GMO everything, bro.
My opinions are my own.
You cut a banana in half and you cut most of the peel off and hand it to the baby, and he just eats the whole thing.
It's like an ice cream cone.
Yeah, he loves that shit. It's
Healthy ice cream
awesome.
cone.
It's awesome.
Potassium.
It's good for him. He loves bananas.
Yeah, you need it. Without
Good kid.
potassium,
Good
you
boy.
get cramps and shit. It's not good. You know,
Yeah.
he's going to be a football player. He's going to
He's
need
doing
those
all those
bananas.
squats all the time, you know?
Gotta
He
stretch
does.
out those muscles,
Yeah.
man. Got to get
Exactly.
flexible muscles.
Dude, that's like one of my favorite things in the world, though, is your wife's Instagram. You know, it's private,
Yeah.
and she sends us those videos, and there's so
Snapchat.
many. Snapchats.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I don't get them, and only Carolina does, because I don't
Yeah.
believe in the Snapchats.
Yeah.
But watching little baby Dax just love life all the time,
Dancing
is
all the
fucking
time.
awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, I got to hold him for like 2 hours. I felt like on Thanksgiving.
He's such a dope kid.
He's generally a pretty happy baby, you know, like unless he wants to eat or wants to nap, he's pretty happy.
I like excited kids,
Yeah.
and that's an excited kid.
He's always excited.
I mean, I might be biased and stuff here, but Dax literally is the coolest baby ever.
Yeah.
Like he's
And
the
it's like-
smartest baby ever. He's the most handsome baby ever.
He's very
everything.
smart. On an objective level, he is doing like he's like mimicking, which is something that he's doing early. Like that's something they do closer to a year, and he's just like he's at 10 months now. So it's not like super early, you know, but it's a little bit early that he's been doing a lot of this stuff. He's always like had really good neck strength. He was just a couple weeks old when he was lifting his head up and stuff.
Oh,
so
yeah.
he's always been very good at that, and he was speaking really early and doesn't walk because he's just a lazy son of a bitch, but everything else that just has to do with speech and with recognition. I mean, he's already doing the baby sign language. He's doing all kinds of stuff. You know,
Fish eggs. eggs.
I attribute it to the salmon eggs.
Thank
That's,
you, Ron
Yep,
Patrick.
yep, that's a real thing.
I know too many babies to participate in this debate.
There you go.
So,
That's all right. That's you know, I'm as objective as I can possibly be, but I'm also his dad. So that
he's the smartest baby,
yeah,
the
it's
most
the
physically
smartest
fit
baby alive. I'm pretty sure.
Genius
Yeah,
baby.
it's-
It's the one area of your life where you're allowed to not be as objective as you
Yeah,
should be.
but he is the cutest baby alive, and that's not objective.
Yep.
But
Oh
he's
my God.
fucking
He's cute,
really cute. Yeah,
Apparently, he has Michael Barker hair too.
that's
When I was a kid, I didn't know.
that's what I've
Didn't occur
heard.
to me
Yeah,
until she said
So
that.
the question is
he's
when he
gonna be a real
turns
cool
50, is it going to be there?
probably.
I hope so. Because it's
That's a full head of hair you got. So
Yeah, but it's supposed to be from your mom's dad, right? And Kevin had lost his hair really early. So we'll see, you know, what the deal is. But my grandpa, when he died, had a full beard and a full head of hair still. So
Perfect.
your mom's dad.
yeah, my mom's dad, my grandpa Hobie. Yeah.
I'd love to be one of those guys that gets to sport a chrome dome,
Yeah.
but like also have a badass beard.
Oh, no.
That's what I want.
I don't want a
shiny
shaved
on
head.
top and dirty on
I
the
want
bottom.
a full white fucking head of hair and then like a white beard. That's
Oh, yeah.
but not of like a Santa beard. You know, I don't want to be like fat or anything. I want to have like a trimmed white beard that's just, you know, like maybe a little bit longer than yours, just so it's nice and puffy, you know, but then also puffy hair that you just
Are you
kind
going
of
to do the straight slick back?
You know, if my hair wasn't so thick, I would consider doing it now because I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like it's a hassle,
C's.
bro. It's
That
yeah,
1950s.
exactly.
Got that 1950s like Italian slick back.
Do you
Full of
know?
grease and shit?
Do you know what I think is really a cool haircut? Have you ever seen the movie Lawless? Shia LaBeouf,
No.
and Tom
Yeah.
Hardy.
Yeah.
So the
Great film.
cop in that, right? He has the haircut where he has like a hard part down the middle, and then it's super like greased to both sides. You know, I think that's pretty
The old
cool.
school pomade.
And if it was, you know, if it was more appropriate, I would consider doing that. But it's like someone took a straight razor to the very middle of his head, you know, which fucking it's
That might
sick.
Yeah, that might get a little white nationalisty these days.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't carry
Weird.
good connotation.
You don't have freedom of a haircut anymore, you know?
No, not at all. So let me ask you this, Michael Barker.
Thank you.
When it comes to all these books that you take part in writing, they come in all types of different themes, right?
Sure, yeah.
Sure. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah. We okay. So the main deals, the main books that we produce theme wise are settings, adventures, and advice. So settings are like, you know, where do you want to play? And where, like, you know, we had that role playing experience and we were playing in Western Washington maybe
Right.
or something like that. But, you know, like I mentioned, there are games where you can play in Middle Earth. You can, there's Star Wars games, there's Star Trek games. So you're playing in these universes, these alternate universes that you can really get into. And it's kind of fun to play in those like pre-made universes that we all know and love. Like I mentioned, Star Wars is one of my favorite just movie series of all time. So we create our own. We have our own central world called Arbitron, and there are little worlds that revolve around it. And so right now we're putting out a Kickstarter called A Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin. Dragon Grin is the world. It's a world like basically take Middle Earth, but imagine like what if Sauron had won?
Okay.
What if Dark Lord wins?
Yeah.
And divides up the world, conquers and divides, the opposite, right? And then puts these Lords of Ash, these horrible rulers in power as governors of each of these regions. And, And we're actually you can pre-order it on absolutetabletop.com, but we're putting out the PDF Q1 2020, physical version Q2 2020, and it's that sort of story. So if that's interesting to you, that grim, dark fantasy where you want to play in a world where like heroes are killed.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a hero. Most D&D happens where like, oh, we're going to be a hero and we're going to rescue the person from the monster. No, here the monsters are they're the ones that are enslaving you.
Yeah.
So,
I want to be a dark governor.
You absolutely can in the book. We actually have rules for it. How do you become one of these Lords of Ash? But we have another world called Aeronoth that is very high fantasy, like the fantasy that you hear and read about in articles and see in movies. And my personal campaign setting is called Enkea, and it is it's like 18th, 19th century themed D&D. It basically asks the question like, okay, what if magic were real, and how would it flip the bitch on the Industrial Revolution?
Oh, dude, have you ever played this old school PC game called Arcanum?
No.
That's like, it's a very similar concept. It's kind of like that steampunky, it's magic meets tech.
Yeah.
I love that genre because the two are always in competition with each other.
Yep.
And then the world that develops is always this weird mesh of both magic and technology. I'm
Steampunk
fucking
is
into
cool.
that.
Cyberpunk is similar, but it uses technology. But what's that amazing quote? Technology. Oh man, I'm going to screw it up. But it's like magic and technology are basically the same thing. Magic is indiscernible from technology to certain people. So dude, I need that exactly.
I cannot remember, but I know exactly what you're talking about. It's
Clark's. Of course.
Yeah. At one point, magic or technology will be indistinguishable from magic.
Yep, exactly. And basically, a lot of settings don't investigate what magic would do to a world. Because they're like, it creates an object that can create light. Ooh, that's amazing. Sting glows blue when orcs are nearby, right? That's cool.
Right.
But like, what if you could grow whole crops in a single night?
Yeah.
What would you do with that power? That's power right there. Would you give that to the people freely so everyone could have everything?
Charge for it?
Would you charge for it? What if you could make like a magical atomic bomb that could destroy a world, like a Death Star? And that's what Enkea explores. It basically begs the question, what if the best of us won? What if the good guys took over the world and said, listen, magic is way too dangerous. We're going to stop this war, this magical war that's happening, and we're going to implement these laws that keep people safe from themselves. And then 900 years later, things start to collapse. That's the idea behind that world. So yeah, those are settings.
No, that's good.
Super ramble about settings.
No, that's good.
We're talking about settings, adventures, and advice.
So let me ask you, I am super into like Fallout, like the video game, right? And they make ones that are like themed like that are...
Yes, actually I think there might have been a Fallout role-playing game. Yeah. I don't know if it got critical reviews, but one of the worlds we're putting out now is called Kror, which is like, have you ever watched Conan, like the old Conan the Barbarian sort of?
I have not.
It's called Sword and Sorcery, but there's like radiation in it, and so it's very similar. But you can, I would guarantee there's a Fallout RPG somewhere.
Oh yeah,
it's called Wasteland Warfare role playing game. I actually think it's combined. You'd like it because it's combined role playing game and miniature game.
That's awesome.
I think.
What a miniature game? What is a
miniature game like Warhammer 40K?
Oh, okay.
You have figures on a big table, and you have terrain, and you use like a tape measurer.
Oh, really?
Move the figs around. Oh yeah. Each fig can move like a certain distance in inches.
Yeah, it's old school tabletop wargaming. Dan Carlin actually did in his side cast. I
love you guys so much. This is awesome. This is exactly what I wanted. Oh yeah, this is perfect.
But yeah, I mean, that was like I want to say probably how tabletop gaming started.
Yes.
The strategy aspect was like historic, nerds like Dan Carlin stuff, they had these games that would create these rules and stuff, and they'd have these little miniatures reenacting like the Battle of Waterloo and all these ancient battles and stuff. And there'd be rules based off of like, from unit size to how much they can move based on what we know about them in history and all this stuff. And then you assign point values to all this stuff. And it just, you build up this, it's like a game in statistics. Every tabletop game it's a narrative told and acted out through statistics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And it's, everything from my ultimate love, Firefly, has a wonderful tabletop role-playing game.
Can I break up this friendship that we've got going on?
Oh,
yeah. What's up?
Serenity's better.
It's, yeah, I know. I just,
no,
man, my world
I love
is
Firefly so much. No,
that was a tangible. I felt something happen here.
Serenity's a complete story, and Firefly was never given that.
Exactly,
it was never given a complete.
We were
story.
robbed of that.
We were
back
robbed
in the 90s.
of the story by Fox.
Fucking Fox.
So
owned by Disney. So it doesn't matter.
The man.
They won't hear about it.
So on one of the podcasts that I was listening to, you guys were talking about a game that you played that was in an asylum. What was that one?
Yes. Okay. So Alex was running a game for us it's a game called Call of Cthulhu, which is based on a writer, long dead writer named H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, okay.
Really creepy, twisted eldritch horror, like tentacled things and stuff.
Yeah, I gotcha.
South Park did a good little cameo for about a 3-episode series.
Yeah. Oh, with the coon. Yeah.
The coon,
okay, I got you.
Yeah. Those were Cthulhu characters.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well,
there it is.
It's worth
Add that one to the list.
Yeah, I always keep a running list of everything I need to watch and see. Because like that's all in writing. If there's anyone listening to this that wants to be a writer, it's all about taking what you see in media and consume in media and adapting it to your own thing.
Yeah.
But I was playing. The cool thing about Call of Cthulhu is you're not playing, some big buff dude with a broadsword or some like sorceress that weaves magic and fires fireballs out of her face or something. Like you're playing. I played a photographer. Who's dad died in World War I. I played.
So it's almost got like an air of like a noir type feel. The
investigation, stuff like that. I remember like the only time I really rolled an intense die roll was when I was trying to sneak and like snap a picture of someone without them noticing. And it was like, it was intense. I was like sweating like, holy crap. But the whole idea is like what sort of, I can't remember the specific plot line of it, but like what sort of, what's happening at the asylum? Like what's going on there? Like what sort of weird twisted entity is taking over?
Right. Because I remember you talking about there wasn't like a lot of like battling that you were doing. It was mostly investigating and just kind of a lot of searching and puzzles, or not like puzzles in particular, but things like that, mind teasers and shit that you got to figure out.
So like a good thriller, you're turning every page because you want to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
Like that's a way like a lot of H.P. Lovecraft stuff is. It's like this ultimate, thriller type thing. It's always like somebody's investigating some weird happenings and like you got to get to the bottom of it. And so you're continuing to turn every page and it's real. Like I said before, it's like that classic kind of noir style. It's always kind of that. What era was that? Like the 50s private investigator type
like
thing.
Like there are 50s, like 20s.
Yeah,
definitely.
Real dark,
I don't know.
Dick Tracy type shit, you know what I mean?
I'm looking for something because Alex is so good because, when you're doing a game like this, you can provide props for the players. And so Alex lives in Maine. He lives in a yurt in Maine.
Really?
And and he streams from there. And so he shipped out all of these. He shipped me a picture of my grandfather and he burned it on one edge. And on the back it said, France, 1917. Like it just like really.
He mailed you shit so that you could
like
know
letters and
shit
stuff that I had received so that we can piece all this together. Yeah. So that guy, he's a good game master.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's really like a good game.
It's dedication is what it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is dedication. He's dedicated.
And a good game master like that, like that's what a good game master really does is, you got a bunch of dudes that live in the modern era and you all sit around this table or on a couch or whatever it is. And a good game master will bring you into that world through how they narrate you through the story, how they guide you guys along through this story.
Yeah.
And it lets you kind of inhabit another character. You know, it's like you're sitting down to play an RPG, except the RPG is unfolding through word, and you know your actions and stuff are done through instead of like sitting there. Did you ever play not the first, but like the main Morrowind Elder Scrolls 3 game?
Yeah.
You know, like when you're really, really young,
Yeah.
when you first start out in that game, young, that was weird. But you're like, you start off and
When you're
like,
fresh,
you
low
get your
level.
first little dagger or whatever, and you run over. There's a little mud
Off that
crab, and
boat
you want
or
to kill
whatever.
everything.
Yeah.
You sit there and you're stabbing this thing, and nothing's happening. And like once every like that looks really weird. Thank you, YouTube. Once every like 30 hits, you know, you'll get a strike.
Yeah.
That's like the digital version of you sitting there rolling a dice, waiting to get that hit number. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you transfer that into just a bunch of people sitting down.
Yep.
You know, there's some really good podcasts. Rooster Teeth, actually, the guys that made
Yes.
Red versus Blue and stuff. They have some good role playing game things where like people actually come in like costume and shit, and they all sit down and they play this game over a period of 3 to 5 hours.
It's weird how popular it's becoming because it kind of
is.
started with Penny Arcade, which was a web comic for so long, and then it turned into something bigger. They do role playing games. The big one that we're talking about at Thanksgiving is Critical Role. They have billboards about Critical Role.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Leif is super into
so
that.
big.
Yeah.
They made millions of dollars into Kickstarter to create an
remember
animated
him.
series. It's basically a group of voice actors that teamed up to do a role playing game, which is the dream, really. So
That is the dream. That would be sweet. Sorry.
Colin's got lots of ideas for Salt of the Streets Media.
Yep.
We're going to do everything, including a lot of charity work. That's so hilarious. So I was looking at this because mostly what you've been talking about the Absolute Tabletop.
Yep.
But as far as the Onyx Path Publishing, what do you know about this game, Exalted?
Okay,
Just
so
going through there.
man.
I mean, they have like Sacred Lands, Scion. They came from under or beneath the sea. They got a bunch of different their games, but Exalted. It sounds epic.
So I'm sorry to say that's the game I know least about. I would say. I know, but it is so epic. I remember I used to work at a gaming store in Albuquerque, and we had Exalted on the shelf, and I just remember the people playing it. They would roll like fistfuls of these dice, and it was. I want to say it was like you play a power character. I want to say you play someone that's especially powerful. That is like, you know, in a game like Morrowind in D&D, you play someone who's just starting out, right?
Yeah.
With the knife and the mud crab.
Then you go on your hero's journey
clink,
to become
exactly. But in Onyx Path, they're like, let's just throw that out the window and make you start as this freaking demigod who can like pull down meteors from the sky or cause plagues across the sands in the desert. And so these, they're just experts at that. They throw that stuff out the window. But I do recommend people look into Exalted. One of the cool other ones that they do is called Scion, which, like I mentioned, demigod. That's all based around playing gods and demigods.
And that's just like a different experience. You're looking to step into that role from the beginning versus start a character from scratch.
Yep.
You know, you're
I
like
wanna build up.
the
I
dude
just-
that shows up at a pub and you run into like 4 random ass people who, surprise, surprise, y'all are going to be best friends.
Yeah. Ooh, wow. That's
gonna
the
go on
worst
this epic
session.
journey.
The worst session is the first one where you have to kind of like, oh, I guess I'll sit next to that person and ask them what they're doing. No, this game, like, if you watch like the Brendan Fraser Mummy games, I mentioned Mummy the Curse earlier. You might be like, God, I would just want to play that mummy. I want to be able to friggin' like make the sand shred people to pieces. Like,
God, that sounds good. I
It's
can
fun.
think of a few people that I want that to happen to.
tomorrow I'm actually going to be creating a character. I'm filming a character creation video for Mummy the Curse that you can find on Kickstarter right now. Actually, maybe I don't know when this is going to drop, but
Monday. She'll be out on Monday the 2nd. Or wait, Jesus, I can do math. Yeah, Monday the 2nd. There we go.
Yeah, there'll be I think 2 days left on the Kickstarter by Monday, but
What was it called?
Kickstarter Mummy the Curse. Oh, you won't find
Mummy
it
the
on
Curse.
the
Yeah, that's
tabletop.
on the Exile or the Onyx Path.
No,
I'm good.
set. That's yours.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome, man. And that is something I'm noticing, like
over
these
here.
smaller publishing brands, like Onyx Path or even Absolute Tabletop, like you guys are creating new content within some of these built-in worlds or starting new ones, and you're using Kickstarter to kickstart it and get it out in the world.
Yep.
It's a very common thing in that.
And the cool thing about indie gaming companies is when one company succeeds, everyone does. Because it become people like when you find a game like the Black Hack, which is a very small, like old school D&D game, old school like type D&D type game, just in a nutshell, you realize, oh man, I didn't realize something like this existed. And then a whole new world pops up and you realize that there are tons of these games.
Introduces you to a market.
Yeah, a huge industry behind the industry.
Right. No, that's very cool. How long have you been? Did I already ask you how long you've been doing this?
Nope. We started in 2015. And so it's been 4 years. It's going to be 5 years in September of 2020.
And this is your job, or do you do something else too? This is how you support yourself?
This is my job. And I did a music production and ran a recording studio for a long time.
Word.
In Moriarty, New Mexico.
Interesting.
And I have since kind of put that as just hobby stuff and just dove into this as hard as possible.
So how did you go from music to writing?
It's so funny this answer is going to be so quick that people are going to think this is staged. This is not at all. I didn't know this question was coming, but it's funny because I graduated from a university with a degree in music production, and my parents came to the graduation ceremony. My wife was there. And I got a course director's award in creative writing. Oh, which is interesting because that was the thing I was really good at. Like, I'm pretty good with audio engineering. I'm pretty good with music production. I'm a pretty good musician, but I love writing and it just comes so naturally. And then one of the guys in Absolute Tabletop, his name's Tim. Tim Carney his YouTube channel is Tabletop Terrors. He said, "Hey, do you guys want to just start writing books? Do you want to do something with it? Do you want to, we actually all had YouTube channels and we just sort of combined forces and said, hey, let's make some books."
Yeah.
And so that's how we got started. Nice. Yeah. No, they're good stuff.
Yeah. See, that's always really interesting because I started writing, I don't know, a few years ago, and I just really dove into it. I took a creative writing class in high school, and it's interesting that I think due to the future that we live in, the fact that you could basically create, if you have a creative, flair to what you're doing, whether it's talking over a microphone or writing or making videos on the very, very small scale, like you have a career path open to you now that you never had available to you 10 years ago.
Agreed.
And it's, I don't know. I think it's interesting that you went to school for music and you did this whole thing, and you, like you said, you obviously found through school that you excelled in writing, and then now you're doing that.
Yep.
How the life of a freelancer,
sure,
we'll say, especially in the writing world. Have you kind of taken to that as like a duck to water? How long did it take you to like break into the industry, or is it just kind of that happy coincidence of like that intersection of like tabletop gaming and writing just kind of came together perfectly, that's just kind of where you started?
It's a mixture of coincidence and hard work. You said, Donovan, that I can say whatever I want.
Whatever you want.
This is my safe place.
Whatever you want.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give a
First Amendment absolutist.
Some input about, because the biggest question we've got is, how do you write? Like, how do you write? Like, tell me, like, what's your secret? How do you write? Like, I've been trying to work on this novel and it's just not coming together. And,
I'm feeling I know the answer to this.
Well, this is I hope not. But the analogy that was given to me recently was, no one teaches you how to masturbate.
Mm-mm.
You just do it. And then, you do it again and it works and, kind of feels good when you're doing it. And then, you're going to end up with a blood blister at some point, but then you're going to change your method and you're going to continue doing it. And then all of a sudden you're going to become very proficient in how you do it. And so the idea is, how do you learn how to write? Is you write.
You just figure it out.
So that was the answer I had. I love the masturbation analogy though, because much like many creative endeavors,
stabbing that mud crab.
Stabbing the mud crab. Sure. That's exactly what that was.
Oh, we created that new thing today.
One of my favorite authors, he's a horror author named Scott Sigler. I'll hook you up with one of his books. It's fucking amazing. But he did a small, short-lived YouTube series about writing, and it's every other writer I've ever heard says the only thing about becoming a good writer, how do you become a big writer? How do you become famous? You just write.
You just do it.
And then when you think you're done, you write some more. Mm-hmm. And then you write again. Mm-hmm. And if you're not writing every single day for at least an hour, you're probably doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's
legit.
Much like many things in this world, if you want to make a career as a writer, you have to work your fucking ass off.
Do it. Do
And
it. It's the only way to get better at anything. Like
you
said.
go to work every day, and regardless of what day job you have, you go to work probably in the realm of around 40 hours a week. Mm-hmm. And eventually you get pretty good at what you do. Maybe you're one of those people that's good when you started, but whatever. You do that for 40 hours a week. If you're trying to develop yourself as a podcaster or as a musician or as a writer or anything else creative, you need to take that same work ethic that you do going to work 9 to 5 and apply it to that other skill that you want to build up.
Yep.
And so there's no shortcuts. You just need to put in the work and do whatever it is you want to do.
How do you be a better guitarist?
You just play
the guitar.
Yep.
How do you get better at public speaking? You just speak publicly. Like you just speak to people and you hone that. That's so but people who ask that question, how do I write, are looking for some sort of tangible advice. And the only thing I can come up with is don't finish something. Don't give yourself something give yourself something to edit tomorrow. Just write. And then tomorrow when you pick it up, you'll be like, ooh, I like that. I hate that. I hate this sentence. Ooh, this sentence should change. And then, all of a sudden I'm inspired to write another paragraph.
Yeah.
And the person who sets out to write one paragraph will write more than the person who sets out to write 10 pages. Because the task is too daunting. I got to write 10 pages. Mm-hmm. No, just write one paragraph. And then once you're done with that paragraph, you blink and all of a sudden you've got 10, 11 pages, 12 pages because you just got inspired. You got in the flow. You found the flow and did it. So yeah, that's why my line, that one right there is, inspire, be a better game master, inspire. It's advice for game masters, but it's really advice for storytellers in general, just how to get creative.
Yeah.
It's inspiration to get the brain working and get it in that space where it can create.
So that could very easily be implemented to creative writing, not just in making games for people. You could use it for all kinds of stuff.
Because really all it is, when you're talking about tabletop role-playing games, you're talking about a narrative style that is older than the written word.
Yeah.
This is something we've been doing as human beings our entire existence, is telling stories, which is also the foundation of every single one of our major religions on the planet. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything stems from that mythos, storytelling. And I think that's...
You guys,
I think you just
30 minutes have gotten it more than my mom has. I swear. What do you do again? Oh my God, I'm a writer.
I write.
I just write stuff, Mom.
Yeah. I just write stuff.
I'm making money. That's all that matters.
Online. Oh yeah, no,
we're doing okay.
Isn't that the worst? Let's talk about that a little bit.
if nothing else, this has really kickstart me to fucking jump back in the game. No excuses.
Cool. Hey, and here's the deal: we can play online.
Oh,
we can play with just the laptop. You can you're going to have a new studio pretty soon. Mm-hmm. You can set that up and have the books. We can run a game on Skype or Zoom or use Zoom or Google Hangouts.
Really? Because I'm kind of thinking that we should probably do that and record it. Is kind of what I'm thinking.
I had
that's my language.
I'll dedicate time to that.
Yeah, definitely. Quick little side note on that.
What?
The RPG thing.
What?
One of the guys that works for me is a big D&D guy. Huge.
Yeah.
Loves D&D, loves Warhammer, loves 40K, the whole thing. And him and our little minions at work, they're all into it too. They really like it. They had fun. So they wanted to start a new campaign, and it's all run out of this guy's house and all this. And I said, all right, perfect. I don't have the bandwidth to go do that once a week. I can't commit to that. But what I want you to do is I'm going to give you some advice. I want you to record that, and I will produce it for you. I'll edit it, and I'll put it out. They never ended up following through, but that's been something I've wanted to do for a while. It's just record an RPG campaign.
Well, let's do it. I think that we should run one of the ones that Michael has written.
We should have Assault on the Streets, one
Yes.
shot, which is basically it's a whole story in one game.
Yeah,
and we can do one or two. That would be fun, and I think the people who listen would.
We should totally do that.
I mean, we got Assault on the Streets fantasy football. We might as well jump in.
Yeah.
Do you have a fantasy football Assault on the Streets?
I mean, it's not.
It's the one that we talk about here.
Yeah, we've been doing the league longer than we've been doing the podcast, but we're both in the league.
Yeah. So, the Dynasty League? Are we talking keepers?
Nope, no. Ours it's a redraft league. I'm in 4 different leagues actually. One of them is a dynasty, and then 3 redrafts. And the one that we do is my big money league. It's a 14-team league, and it's a $50 buy-ins, and it's winner take all, so $700 at the end of the season if you come in first place. Yeah. So it's not a bunch of money, but $700 is a pretty good wad,
that is
for
quite
fantasy.
Yeah,
and 14 teams is extremely challenging. To have a good team with 14 teams.
I'm just trying not to come in last place.
This year we implemented a penalty for last place is that you have to buy dinner for the person who won the league. So not only do they take your money, but you have to buy them dinner.
You guys
as
going
well.
to Taco Time or something?
It is worked out between the winner and the loser what the dinner is, but it is a meal of undetermined value. So I leave that up to them.
If I'm the second worst, I'll be okay. But man, if I'm the last, I'm gonna have a real existential crisis, I think.
Yeah. Last year we didn't. When I first started playing fantasy, there was no trade deadline in that league. So when I started this one, we didn't have a trade deadline. And then last year there was disputes about the trade deadline and trades happening. And so this year I was like, okay, well we can either, put in a trade deadline, or we can make a punishment for last place so people will continue to play. And then there's like no concern about people just giving away their teams, and like maybe it's a little more right. And so then they were like, well, someone was like, why don't we do both? I was like, I guess, yeah. I was like, we'll take a vote, yeah. And so we voted, and that got the most votes, and so we have a penalty and also a trade deadline, and so right. And this is the last week before the playoffs, and I at one point, as the commissioner, was 2-7, and have battled my way into the 8th seed of the playoffs. It's
called the Commissioner's Curse.
Yes. I won year 1 when it was $100, when it was for,
said, oh, of course you won.
And then, and I was really the only one that had played. And so it wasn't like that weird, it was like, we only did $10, and it was 10 people. So it wasn't a big deal. And then I've was in the playoffs every year after that, but haven't won since. And this year I did so fucking terrible. And now I'm in the 8th seed of the playoffs, in the last spot. And so if I lose this week, I'm out. But if I win, then I'll stay in the 8th seed, maybe move up to 7, but I'll be in just the very end. So we're
8th
close.
Seed is like that's all that matters is that bracket.
I just have to be there. Yeah.
You just have to be there.
Which sucks because the 1 seed is like 9-2 or 9-3 or something. He's fucking killing it.
In the Dynasty League that I was in for a long time, we did, once you got to the playoffs, starting with the first seed, you'd choose your opponent.
Really?
You would decide who your opponent was going to be. So it wasn't like 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, whatnot.
Really?
It was you chose your opponent, which mostly ended up with that sort of format.
Yeah.
Because you're not stupid. But
right.
Occasionally, actually, there was one time where the 1 seed picked the number 2 seed because they had this rivalry going, and they wanted to figure it out right then.
Just want to knock them out.
It did not go the number 1 seed's way.
That's the danger.
That's it. That's the risk you're taking, man. That's what you're going for.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. The 14 teams is really, really difficult. The draft takes, 2.5 hours or something like that. And we even have a short bench just because of that. But it's a whole deal. But yeah.
I've been on the receiving end of that trade deadline argument though, where it's because it's one of those things where when you're new to the league, you never realize it's an issue until all of a sudden the league is ruined.
Right.
Because someone says, oh, screw it. I'll give away all these good players because I want that person to win. Yeah. Or they'd agreed to share half the booty with me, whatever.
Yeah, it can be a tough spot. Yeah. And so we try and handle it as a commissioner. I'd like to really try and be hands off. I just don't want to really deal with, whatever the disputes are. But if enough people say something to me about it, then I'll do a little digging around and be like, hey, what's up with this going on here, And if it's got to be dealt with, then I'll do whatever. But for the most part, I would rather just not do it now and then vote on it next time we do the draft, and then we'll sort it out then, because I just don't like to fuck with things during the season.
Agreed.
So you want to take the anti-Trumpian approach is what
exactly. I really would rather just deal with it next year when we draft, and be like, that really sucked, but at least we know now. So I just don't,
because you're gonna create more problems if you in fantasy football and other
Yeah.
regards by jumping in right in the middle of something.
Right. And I'm fucking playing too, you know, so I can't make it look like I'm being biased by ruling in anyone's favor. That's like, oh, well, you know, we're fucking going to play in the playoffs. And so you just don't want me to win. I'm like, well, it's not that, you know, yeah. So I don't even use anybody's names when I'm like, hey, I received, you know, an anonymous complaint about this thing. And like, I just gotta fucking ask to make sure that it's cool. And that sucks. I hate that shit.
That's called playing your role as commish. You know, you got to be an impartial third party who does your job correctly and make sure there's no bias.
Right.
Other than all the trade info you give me.
Well, there's like Jordan plays in the league, and then there's like another couple that plays in the league, which like complicates it even more. You know that like if I'm going to trade with Jordan, it has to be like super extra straight up and totally legit looking, or else you know there's like, oh well, you guys are just fucking, you know, this person has the better record, and so they're just trying to give you the player. Like this isn't fair. You guys are married or whatever, and so that's like extra difficult. And so the trades are so sparse in the league because there's like.
And we have 14 teams.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nobody.
People are scared. People are fucking scared to trade because of the 14 teams. They don't want to risk, you know, getting rid of anything that they might need later in the season.
Yeah.
That's fucking hard.
So I wanted to get a couple more little nerd questions in, if you don't mind.
Whatever, dude. Whatever.
So I did find that the person that did say that quote.
He's here for you. That's why I brought him here. This is an early Christmas present. Merry Christmas, Colin. I brought you a Michael Barker. That's what's
He's
going
all
on
mine,
here.
motherfucker.
Yeah.
So the great Arthur C. Clarke, sci-fi legend himself, said any significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So that's that line we were talking about.
There you go.
So, oh shit, I forgot one of the questions I was going to ask you. The first one being, so we'll just go to the other one. Hopefully I'll remember. Dungeons and Dragons versus Pathfinder. Do you know? I mean, do you play both of those games? Are you familiar with the two differences?
I can't believe you would set me against my personal friends right off. That's not right off the bat. It's 2 hours in.
This is nerd culture, man. If you pick one team over another, it's worse than fucking politics. Because at least in politics, there's only two teams. There's a lot of issues on each side. But then nerd culture, man, Firefly versus Serenity can be a fucking relationship ender.
It really is, actually.
Wash, take a pipe through the chest and you're okay with it, or no?
Leaf on the wind. I was when I first got started on YouTube, someone mentioned in the comments that I looked like
a little bit of Wash.
What's the name of the actor? Oh no!
Everybody forgets his name, and that's exactly why. I
never forget it because someone.
That's exactly why they made the show Con Men.
Yeah. But I think I look like Trey Cool from Green Day, which is something
I can see that.
Oh yeah. All right.
I get it. Dude, you're batting 2-0 on celebrities here.
I'm on hurt myself. I can't remember his name. It doesn't matter. So here's a little history lesson about D&D and Pathfinder.
All right.
Is there's this magazine. I think it was a Dungeon magazine and Dragon magazine are two separate yet same sort of publisher, sort of a same topic line type of informative magazines about Dungeons and Dragons. And for a long time, through the 3.5 edition, there was a 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons and then a 3.5 edition. The publisher of that magazine was Paizo Productions.
Oh.
And they eventually D&D created 4th edition, which is the most, what's the word? Divisive. It's the most divisive Dungeons and Dragons. Thanks for that kiss, Colin.
No problem.
The people only listening to the audio will never know. The 4th edition was the most divisive Dungeons and Dragons. You're talking about splitting nerd culture because they literally appealed to the World of Warcraft players by making the mechanics more like powers with cooldowns instead of, like a D&D previously. Paizo Productions, in response to 4th edition, created Pathfinder.
Okay.
So their publisher for their magazine turned against them, WotC, Wizards of the Coast, to create Pathfinder, which is basically what people call 3.75. It's like, what if 3.5 were perfected instead of this whole new 4th edition? I do not play a lot of Pathfinder. I have a lot of Pathfinder books because there's inspiration to be found in any book. But
So you read them just for research. For
Exactly.
your own,
I read it and I see, oh, that's a cool item. I'm going to reskin that for this game. But that goes for any game, not just, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
I have played very little Pathfinder. I've played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and I don't see that changing in the future.
Okay.
Did you like the 4th editions of Dungeons and Dragons?
Some of the best games I've ever played were played while 4th edition books were on the table. Ooh. That's not that should show you what role playing is. It's so narrative, and you can take what you want, leave what you don't want.
And so for those of you who don't follow nerd culture, Michael just lost a lot of friends.
I may have lost a lot of friends. I also may have gained a lot of friends, but that's what we're going for, right? Is a balance. Yeah. As many times people block you, more people follow you, and then you piss those people off, and then you get these people back.
Well, and you can control, because it depends on who you tell about this podcast that you are on. So you can totally choose who you tell about this.
I'm not smart enough to do that. I'll probably just share the link to
everyone here.
People will be pissed. And
that's all right. That helps us. So whatever.
Yep. Politically, I'm also very divisive. My most right-wing and centrist friends call me a socialist, and my socialist friends call me a centrist. So it's very I feel like, in a way, that's how you know you're doing it right. But, both sides would disagree.
No one should. I have spoken before that I pride myself on the amount of people that have listened to this podcast and then told me later, like, I'm not really sure where you sit at politically. Like, will you, how would you, identify yourself? Like, many people have said that to me, and I pride myself personally on it, that I'm like, I don't know.
I'm complicated.
I'm an independent. I don't know what to tell you.
That's what Rogan said to Jocko. Like, I don't even know where you are. And I just, in that moment, thought, oh, yeah, I don't either. Like, what the hell is this guy?
Oh, yeah. Well, that is I don't want to say systemic problem with where politics is now, but it's people expect you to be on this team or that team. Yeah. And there's no room for nuance, period.
You can't have a faction without a narrative. Exactly. Yeah. When it gets to this point, and historically it always gets to this point where the factions rule.
And this is why the creative minds, the IDW is built up of creative minds. And the reason is because creative minds, they can understand that you can have a nuanced view on something and still belong to this team or that team. Mm-hmm. The fact that we have the two teams is a whole nother conversation altogether. Mm-hmm. But when we look at that Joe Rogan episode with Tulsi Gabbard and Jocko Willink on it, I don't think it could be more perfectly illustrated that there are people out there that belong to this party.
Right.
And in this case, the Democratic Party, who do not exactly, they definitely don't fit into the overall narrative that has been crafted around that party.
Right.
And this is why the people that do not conform to that narrative have a hard time getting noticed, getting any kind of support whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Donald Trump was not a Republican when he ran for president.
Hard no.
Bernie Sanders was not a Democrat when he first ran for president.
Right.
But now the parties have kind of formed around those people, because what's the alternative? Mm-hmm. Lose?
Right.
And where the party should morph its agenda and its views based off of the candidate, we've come to a situation where if you don't fit the party's narrative, you cannot be the candidate. You need to be in this lane, or you need to be in that lane. Yep. Regardless of whatever the narrative is, you got to choose a lane and stay in it.
The DNC is especially sinful in that regard. Especially in 2016, visibly putting their hand on the scale to make
Sorry, Bernie.
Yep, no. Yeah, exactly. And no one knew. There were people who knew, but nothing changed.
Right. And we've talked about that before, that I was actually watching a Michael Moore documentary, as much as, whatever. But
I like those documentaries.
And they have a lot of good information in them sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember which one I was watching, but he was talking about the Bernie Sanders campaign and how Bernie Sanders had won every district in Michigan and then didn't receive any of the delegate votes. I had obviously knew about some fucking before, but then to see that, and you're like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Like,
the person with the sign in the background, barely getting into the,
and you're like, how does something like that even happen when you have people that are saying that they are objective and are just listening to the people, but something like this is happening right out in public. And if you live in Michigan, then you know that, you know, but if you don't live there and you're not watching that camera at that second, then you're not going to have any fucking idea that that's even happening.
Never. You're not going to have that idea. And that Barack Obama just recently said that if Bernie Sanders were about to get the nomination, he would speak up against it. And that right there, that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah.
Barack's been coming out heavy lately when he starts talking against, the intersectional activists that have been so crazy. There was that 2-minute clip. I don't remember if we played it on the show or not. But
I don't think we did, but we might have talked about it privately.
And, it's when Barack Obama, who, if you put yourself back before 2016, Barack Obama was not considered a moderate in almost any fashion. He was about as progressive a Democrat as you could be at the time. And in 8 years, now Barack Obama he's seen as
like a centrist,
more of a
almost.
centrist. Yeah. When Joe Biden is the centrist candidate, where has the Overton window shifted?
Yeah.
How far has that shifted?
I know people also who would say that there is no left movement in the United States because no one's building guillotines. Everything is even democratic, because you can look at places in the world where that have exercised, say, Bernie Sanders philosophies.
Yeah.
And so because they already exist, it's not completely left, right? Completely left would be like, I feel like, what was it? It's another Dan Carlin thing. You go far enough left and far enough right and you hit the same authoritarian garbage. Stalin and Hitler were both Nazis in that,
just how you go about it is different.
Yep.
But the end goal is the same. It's the ideological horseshoe. You start as centrist at the top of a horseshoe, and as you get more extreme, you actually come back together, and you're more similar than you are different at that point.
Yeah.
So now that we've approached a very important facet of the podcast, I'm going to run and take 2 minutes.
Sounds good. Do it up.
So I hope you guys keep that conversation going.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what we're here for.
That is awesome. So my favorite point, I will just say, before, in the debates that happened while we were gone, because I think that happened, what was it, the Wednesday after the podcast? Or something?
Yeah,
Wednesday or
it's
Thursday?
the fifth Democratic debate.
And the lowest ratings, apparently, to date so far. So
I heard that.
But we were both very good. We were live tweeting during the whole thing. We were just posting. My favorite line to come out of that whole thing was when they were talking about the military and military spending and build up and all that. And the question was asked to Elizabeth Warren whether she would continue to build up the military. And she actually said, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, pause button. So, it doesn't surprise me compared to everything else that she said. She's talking about gutting military spending to pay for socialist programs, her programs. I don't want to sound too narrative there. But she's talking about doing that, but also she's going to get more people in the military ranks. How does that how does that escape your mouth? The ridiculous shit that comes out of her mouth, that tops it.
I'm not sure. But again, I wouldn't. All right, so let me start here. I agree. It doesn't make any sense. No. It doesn't make any sense at all.
That's just one out of
logically. But we've been talking for a long time about how a lot of the stuff that she says is worded in a very lawyery fashion. So as it plays out during the debates, but once you look at it a little bit closer afterwards, you're like, well, that's not exactly true, but I guess technically what she said was,
it's like, I can pay for this and this.
Right. And
this,
and she did the same thing in this last debate as well. In all 5 debates, she's done the exact same thing that she talks about, when you reach the very top of the 1% or whatever, then pitch in the 2 cents. And with that, I can do this, which, it's, we've seen, but we've seen a number of articles now that have looked at that, and like I was saying, is worded in such a way that you could pay for any one of these, programs very easily. I
could say this, comma, this, comma. That's
right.
The exact same as saying I could pay for this or that,
but not all of these things together. It's not even mathematically enough money that you're talking about to pay for all these things, but it's not worded in a way where she says I can pay for this and this and this and this. It's I could pay for this.
Yeah. Snopes would say that's almost true.
It's like half true, right? Because it's like, yeah, I mean, you could pay for any number of these things, but you couldn't pay for all of these things with the amount of money that you're talking about, you know? And so she's very good at that, you know, it's part of her background, you know, coming from being a law professor, right? Is what she was doing before. So, I mean, that's kind of her jam.
A corporate lawyer before that.
Right. I mean, that's her. It's so especially that so as to tie up loopholes and stuff, you know, but to, you know, exactly where to find them. So I would implore everyone listening to continue to look for things like that in the wording of the things that she says and the plans that she introduces, you know, even as soon as she put out the actual numbers for her healthcare plan, there was that same day people were saying, well, those don't work out. You know, these figures that you've released don't work out to what you're saying the end product is, you know,
they don't add up at all. And
she's like, well, if you look at it this way, you know, if you imply all of these things and just, you know, kind of hope that this is what they're going to do, then it will turn out to be this, you know.
And Biden and Buttigieg have jumped on that ever since that report came out, where she detailed how she's going to get the money she's getting. Right. Not to mention the fact that the majority of her spending policies rely on, you know, a tax that is on its face blatantly unconstitutional. Yeah. The idea of a wealth tax is being thrown around now like it's just normal. And, you know, well, I mean, these other countries have tried it. These other countries have tried it. Well, these other countries don't have a written constitution that speaks wholeheartedly against that. Yeah. You know, how do you efficiently rectify, you know, per penny how much somebody is worth and then decide to tax them on that? There's no way, you know, let's say however much Mark Zuckerberg is worth or Jeff Bezos is worth. Yeah. They don't have that much cash. That's the overall capital that they have built through these companies they own and all this different thing. That's not liquid cash that you can just siphon.
It's ones and zeros. That's all just shit, you know.
Well, money doesn't mean anything anymore, so it's fine.
Not since we got up the gold standard.
Yeah. Which, by the way, the gold standard might not be a great thing to get attached to anyways.
Yeah.
Because
I told you I didn't understand the gold thing. The gold thing really just escapes me. I don't,
The gold thing is an attempt tying a currency to a limited resource. Thank you. That, you know, we know there's a limited supply of. That, you know, it prevents central authorities from fucking with the currency's value. Because there's only so much of that thing. This is what Bitcoin's, you know, all the e-currencies, you know, mindset is on this stuff. And if we're I saw some Facebook shit the other day where these people were talking about this asteroid or this meteor that's going to be flying close to Earth here real soon. And it's like mostly gold. And then there's so much gold in it that if somehow or other we're able to harness every ounce of gold in there, would devastate any economy based on gold, because now you have a surplus of gold in the market.
Should we shoot it out of the sky? Is that what the idea is?
No. Let's just get up there. We'll harvest it and we'll bring it down. Oh. Computer prices would drop dramatically. Just, you know, me. It's fine.
Just me.
Yeah. No, man, I will trust Elon Musk with my fate. Yeah. That's fine. He's a smart enough guy. I trust him. He's got good intentions.
So the gold thing is worth your money. We talked about this before. The gold thing is worth your money if only America is going to go to shit. But if the whole world goes to shit, then what does gold do for you at that point? I mean, at that point, bullets. That's what I'm saying. Bullets is going to be what matters the most when the world goes to shit. I mean, if you're like a scientist, you're like, I can make something with this, you know. But for the most part, I don't. If money doesn't matter anymore and it's just all about supplies, I don't give a shit about gold, fucking jewelry, you know? Yeah. Or nuggets of gold. I don't know what that does for me in a survival circumstance.
No.
You know?
I mean, gold is only good for you as long as there is a demand for something like gold.
Right.
And whatever the arbitrary purpose of it really is, I mean, in a truly in a manufacturing sense or like in an objective sense, what is gold good for? Well, we use it in like cell phones and computers,
electronics,
and you know, circuit boards,
spacecraft,
and shit like that. But other than that, what is it good for? I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
It's just people grabbed it because it was a shiny, rare commodity, I guess. Where did the value of gold truly come from? I don't know. But it's that commodity that is wanted by, you know, there's a demand for it globally for whatever reason. Whether it's, I mean, it's the same thing with fucking diamonds. It's just a bunch of carbon that has been crushed under a lot of heat and shit like that. It's a shiny rock. It's a shiny bit of carbon.
But then
why
the
do we care
media
about
says
that?
diamonds are forever, and the media says,
James Bond said that originally.
It's true. It is, the media comes into play and starts running ad campaigns that make diamonds, more valuable. But when the diamonds are all locked away, it's this illusion of
Scarcity.
Yeah.
And now we have synthetic diamonds, quote unquote, that are being made
in a lab
in Canada mostly.
I be hearing ads for that all the time.
Yeah, quote unquote, blood diamonds, or blood-free diamonds, or
lab-grown diamonds.
Mm-hmm. We talked about that once upon a time.
And I was like, what do you mean? Are you growing a diamond? I don't. That's very strange. But
all you do is you do the work of the earth, man.
It's weird.
Time or pressure and heat. That's all you need. Mm-hmm. With pressure comes heat. So thermodynamics, bitch.
Science word. I don't. I'll give you that one. Right. Yeah.
So to get back to the debates real quick, it's funny. I got the real clear politics pulled up, and for whatever reason, the ad on Real Clear Politics for me, anyways, is a Tulsi 2020 ad that pops up.
Wait. No, go ahead. And no. You continue, and then I'll. This is the whole deal.
How do you think they alphabetize these? How do you think they order these? Because it's not alphabetical. They're talking about the results, and they're not ordered by number, but they're definitely ordered in a way where Sanders is never the first name you see on the list.
Subjective.
Yeah.
Sanders is hardly ever at the top, except for usually in like northeastern polls.
Democratic president. Yep.
Yeah. And the latest polls that are out right now are the Economist YouGov polls for the national nomination, and right now Biden's up 6 points over anyone else. Sanders,
who's being polled is what matters.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got Harris sitting at 4, so Tulsi did a good job devastating her. She's pretty much done and out of the race at this point.
Where's Mayor Pete at?
Oh man, and there's been articles coming out this week for Kamala Harris's her internal campaign.
I fucking hate
falling
Kamala
apart.
Harris.
I mean, there's people writing scathing letters as they resign about how fucked up it all is and how they're hiring people to come in for a week, move, and then like 2 weeks later they're like, well, sorry, we can't afford you. Bye. She's on a sinking ship. Buttigieg, depending on where you're at right now, Mayor Pete is actually
in Iowa. He's balling.
Yeah, he's trying to overthrow the Biden as the quote unquote centrist, as the more moderate guy, and he's competing against Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who I think her campaign might be dying off at this point.
Do you want to know what?
Please.
Mayor Pete's my dark horse.
Your dark horse?
Yeah. I think I like something inside of my gut is like, this guy's got it. I don't know what it is. And part of it, so I know what part of it is, right? Part of it is that when he first came on the scene, Mayor Pete was super left, super duper left, especially like socially and stuff. At the
very, very beginning, he was very moderate. And then it quickly turned.
Yeah. And ever since then, he's started to shift back more towards moderate, right? Yeah. And again, you have to look at it on the spectrum that the Democratic Party is now, right? I'm not talking about the overall spectrum, because if you're looking at it, then he's still super progressive, right? But as it sits now, the Democratic Party, the candidates, right? If that's a spectrum in itself, he's really kind of sitting in the middle, And if you're looking at Medicare for all as like, this is the going standard is Medicare for all, right? Which is a strange way to look at it. But if that's like, this is what he's really, I prefer a public option over just a straight up Medicare for all, So if those are my options, is either a Medicare for all or a public option, then I'm going to take a public option. If those are the two that are given to me. Mm-hmm. And so he's coming off of that. I mean, I appreciate I'm telling you, that's the guy, I think. Cause I think Joe Biden's looking terrible. He visually looks terrible. He sounds terrible when he's up on the stage. He's like almost slurring all the time. The worst. Yeah, it's really bad. It looks really, really bad.
None of my leftist friends like him either.
No,
I don't really know anyone that likes Joe Biden.
It's bad.
He's the old school kind of establishment guy. He's got a lot of black support, as they say.
Right.
From his time in Congress over the years, but
Yeah, he's fading quick. He's not somebody that's going to do it. I think, like you said, I think Mayor Pete might be onto something. He's trying to hang a little bit back.
Yeah.
Warren is going to sink herself. The country's not. I don't think they're too willing to commit to Sanders. There's enough people that don't want to go all that way. And I think Mayor Pete is going to present himself as more of a moderate and be able to get more of a public appeal.
Right.
He will appeal more to the Trump voters that don't want to vote for Trump again.
And publicly, especially in the debates, like I said, he is appealing more moderate, right? But when you're looking at like some of the campaign ads that have been coming out, he's still dipping the toes to like let people know, like, hey, I'm still fucking out here though. Like I'm still on the left. I'm still out here. You know, the one campaign ad that's kind of circling right now is when he's talking about like free college for 80% of people, right? That like there's a threshold of like your family makes enough money and you don't, you don't get to be in this program for free college. And so there's all kinds of people, especially on the left, that are like, you can't, put out a universal program that's not universal and goes against all of like our ideals and all this stuff. And that's neither here nor there, but he's still appealing to the people that want or that are cool with a wealth tax, right? They're like, well, fuck the people that are at the 1%. So anything that's going to still get at them, And so he's like, I'm here. I'm a centrist. Joe Biden, all the blacks, he still has to find a way to be cool with black people because they don't like Pete Buttigieg at all.
Yeah, he's got zero support right now in like South Carolina. And,
but he's doing enough to like, I don't want to use dog whistle because that carries like just a negative connotation, and I don't see it as inherently negative, but
he pays enough tribute to
right. That's what it is. Yeah. He's still doing things to let like kind of the far left, for lack of a better term, like know that he's still out there. He's like, I'm still here. Yeah. He's still, I'm out here. I have to appeal to the moderates as it is, but also when it comes down to it, fuck this 1%. Like I know we're still not cool with them. Like that's still fucked up. We're still against them, and I think that's very interesting.
It is.
He seems to be playing it very well,
No, I get that. I definitely get that.
What do you think, Michael Barker?
That's a deep well to jump into.
It is. Yeah. It's kind of open ended.
Yeah.
Where are you on the 2020 candidates? So far.
So, if you had to pick a winner right now, who do you think it would be?
And actually, before you answer that, have you watched any of the debates? There's been 5 of them so far. Have you watched any of those? Have you listened to any of them?
Let me ask you 3 more questions before you get to answer that one.
I'm a scrub that has watched clips of debates.
Okay.
Which is that's exactly what the candidates want. They want their soundbite to spread.
Yeah.
That's the idea behind debates is they want to get that soundbite in, that something for the commercial that they can show over and over and over and over and over again while you're eating your pancakes. And
you got a minute and 15 seconds to answer this question.
Exactly. And
that's also called a soundbite.
All of Tulsi Gabbard's campaign ads that I saw during the Joe Rogan podcast that I watched on YouTube were clips of her at a debate or interviewed after the debate or before the debate. All of them. They were all clips taken from debates or different interviews that she did. It wasn't like there was one that I desperately have to ask you both about. We can finish this first, but we have to discuss this other one.
Sure.
But all of them, other than this one, were just clips from different debates.
And I think it's important to reference like why I asked you that question, Michael, is because I think that's where most people are at. Most people don't have 3 hours to commit on a Wednesday evening to sit down and watch debate. So most people get the clips and what they see on, the major media networks. So I think your opinion is very valid when it comes to looking at it on like a mass scale.
And valuable in this particular instance.
Well, let's see how this goes then. I feel like this is a belief of mine that I've had for a while. I believe that when the president is inaugurated, I believe they are shown something that puts them on the side of the military-industrial complex. I believe they're shown something that puts them on the side of, dare I say, the war profiteers. Because Obama at one point represented the epitome of change. He said he was going to close Guantanamo. He did not. That was the test in my mind. I saw that. He did not do that. Why? There's a lot of reasons why he did not. And I probably would not have also. But here's the deal is that once the president, I feel like they're showing something like, hey, look how the world is in a thermonuclear Mexican standoff with itself. Look how there are thermonuclear weapons honed in on all the major settlements in the world. How does that sit with you? Look how Iran already has the bomb. That last one is a stretch, but that's I feel like there's something that brings the new president into the fold and easily makes them think, oh shit. Well, yeah, all that money's got to stay there. We need that budget, something like that.
Instantly changes the calculus because you don't know the problems that you're getting into until you get the fucking job.
And then all of a sudden you're like, listen, if we yield here, here, and here in those places that you said we were going to yield, Americans will starve in the streets beyond anything we've seen since the Great Depression. Some sort of knowledge like that. And we can't tell anyone about this. Like, listen, this is not something that we want to broadcast because
it would ruin the public.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe that this is just from the opinion of someone who wants to see what happens. I want to see what happens when Bernie Sanders is elected. I want to see what happens when the military-industrial complex, Big Pharma, is challenged in a way that they have not been challenged in decades. I want to see that occur. I want to see what comes of it. I want to see him say, nope, we can't do this. Or I want to see it become the machine or get killed trying to fight the machine or something like that. I feel like at this point, we need to break something. And I think that Bernie Sanders is the person that will break something. And I believe that he will do so without being, of all the candidates, he will be swayed the least.
So, on that point, I think a lot of people that voted for Trump thought they were voting for that bull in a china shop to come in and smash up the establishment and, provide new change.
And that's what the DNC was afraid of, and they felt that probably that, a lot of people think that Bernie would have taken voters from Trump. And now no Trump voter would say, yes, I agree. But back then in 2016, a lot of them probably would have swapped over.
Yeah. I think there's still a lot of people that did vote for Trump in 2016 that won't vote for him this time. I know that because,
for many different reasons.
Yeah. I know that because I might be amongst them.
Does it depend on the Democratic candidate?
Oh, hard, yeah. It does.
That's a scary place to be in.
Really, what it comes down to is I'm going to either vote Democratic or I'm not going to vote top of the ticket. That's the way it is. And I think a lot of people are going to be forced into that situation. When it came down to 2016, it was a lot of people saw it was more, Hillary Clinton represented something. She represented the past. She represented, the establishment that people were already angry about. She represented gridlock in Congress and dirty politics and all this good stuff. And then we had a reality TV star who was like, well, fuck it. I'll flip the coin. I'll vote for Bernie Sanders and see what the fuck happens. Yep. That might work out. And then it obviously didn't for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are going to be forced to make that choice. Can I handle my conscience voting 4 more years of this, or do we go a different direction? And
now we have Bloomberg
and
tipping the scales.
That's for anybody that's ever lived in New York and who know Michael Bloomberg's governance. I think you would be hard pressed to find a single person in New York City that would want to vote Bloomberg for president. It is. He's getting raked over the coals now for stop and frisk, which Giuliani started and he just upheld, which ultimately made New York a really, really safe place to be, but might have trampled all over human rights for a little while. But, he's a billionaire. That's tough to get into. He has more money than anything else. He runs Bloomberg fucking television. Okay. It's hard for him to step in as a Democrat saying, hey, no, I need to be able to be here for when everybody else folds so I can fight against this Trump thing. You're really kind of the same type of guy. You're really that top 1% of 1% billionaire fighting against another one. Not a lot of people are going to be into that, especially the real hardcore Democratic voters, I don't think. I think he's got more money. He's got enough money to keep himself alive. He's not going to be participating in a lot of the primaries.
I heard
he's not going to be in any debates.
I heard
he's
that
self-funded.
he's just going straight to like California. He's just bypassing these first couple of primaries, and he's just going to go to some of the bigger states and try and get the primaries there.
Do you think he's not going to survive 5 minutes in Iowa?
Yeah.
There's nobody in Iowa that would vote for him. Maybe a few, but like he's getting 1% in Iowa.
Not if there's people that are embracing Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. They're certainly not going to buy into Bloomberg this deep into the race. Anybody who was on the fence and then bought into Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders when they didn't know at first is definitely not going to revert back and go to Bloomberg. So,
the waters are already flavored. And there's no change in that brew of that tea, what's there is there, and you're either gonna jump in that Democratic fucking, I don't know.
How do you think he would have done if he were there from the start, Bloomberg?
No, people would have seen him against Biden. At least in my opinion, I don't think
I feel like he would have toppled Biden.
I think the Bloomberg's thing now with the billionaire thing, right? I think that his shtick is going to be to try and take the people from Donald Trump that liked that he was different, like you were talking about, that he had money, he knows how to run a business. All those people that bought into Donald Trump for that reason, but now don't like him for the whatever the social shit that's come out. Stormy Daniels, they think there's a P tape, whatever reason, right? Or if there's, if they're a fucking farmer, whatever, any number of reasons that someone could not like Donald Trump now, but like that he's trying to run America like a business, because that's still a huge appeal to a lot of people. Yeah. They could still like that and then lean on Michael Bloomberg for that and be like, oh, and he has these different policies that maybe will work a little bit better. He doesn't want to do this tariff thing, and he, wants to fucking do this or whatever. And, he really likes, colored people now that he's against this, stop and frisk. And so, I can buy into him because he's not going to call me a rapist if I'm Mexican. And, all these people that, like I said, don't like Trump for whatever reason, but still like the business thing.
Well, and
I think he might be going for that,
Yeah, the corporate interests that divorced themselves from Elizabeth Warren as soon as she started talking about wealth taxes and there should be no billionaires and all this stuff, that would have voted for a Democrat, or that might become a viable option now. But at the end of the day, all that really meant was you secured unlimited funding, and he already has unlimited funding. I don't know how many in the realm of sheer numbers. I don't know where he would stack up against that. This latest Economist YouGov polls got him polling at 3% nationally, compared to some people. Tulsi the other day pulled in Boston Globe polled 6%.
Really?
But the DNC says they're not going to accept that one.
Okay.
Which is funny.
So let me ask you about this, right? So the very first Tulsi Gabbard ad that I saw, because I was at work, so I was watching Joe Rogan with Tulsi Gabbard and Jocko Willing, right? So the very first ad that I saw, Tulsi Gabbard is like, I am just proposed House initiative, I don't remember the number, right? Where she wants to declassify all materials regarding 9/11. She wants to declassify all documents regarding 9/11 so that we can know about all the ties, the Saudi ties, all the shit, right? You know me, I fucking hate the Saudis, right? So I was like, oh, word. So, so my ears perked up, but I also was like, I can't fucking believe that she just said that she did that. So, you said on Thanksgiving you've changed very much since Jordan, right? But Jordan used to tell me, she's like, oh yeah, you gotta like ask Michael Barker about 9/11 sometime, because he has like the craziest shit that he says about it. And so I was like, okay, word, like that sounds awesome. Yeah. And Colin, this is no judgment on him at all, but I've brought up 9/11 a couple of different times and he's been unwilling to discuss it, which is totally fine. It's been a topic that you're like, well, we're not going to talk about that, and then we move on to whatever we're talking about. Maybe it's in the interest of time. Maybe it's in the whatever, right?
I'm a part of the establishment. I buy into the establishment story that the Taliban attacked us on 9/11, period, straight up, full stop.
Yeah.
Done. I don't want to hear nothing else about fucking the temperature of steel melting in jet fuel and all this crap. I can't do that, because the minute I'm willing to buy into that, I'm willing to buy in that the entirety of the U.S. government essentially has enough wherewithal to get away with a conspiracy on that level, which is just devastating to me emotionally and psychologically, and I could not handle that, and I will become an expat and go live in fucking Ecuador.
Yeah.
because I can't handle that.
So,
All right, Epstein is hard enough. Jesus Christ.
so I
Epstein
certainly
didn't kill himself.
I certainly don't mean to implicate any type of conspiracy, but I was 7 years old when 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And so I grew up
sweet
in
summer
a.
child.
So I grew up in an
Do you
era
remember
of
not having to take your shoes off at the airport? Do you have any memories of meeting your family at the gate?
I remember when my mom could walk me to the gate. So I remember that, but yeah, but that was again, like, I think I started flying when I was 8. So it was right after 9/11. So it wasn't as intense as it is now, but was more intense than it had been before. So I grew up in an era of increased security, but not the TSA that we exist with now. That's throw your fucking water bottles away and, you know, bags even smaller and shit like that.
Because we've had, never mind, I don't want to go down that road. Fuck TSA, that's all I got to say.
So,
Security
you know, I don't know, you know, I would never argue to someone that it didn't happen the way that, you know, it's proposed to, because I don't know enough to combat that argument. But, you know, I also grew up in an era where it's been like 50, 75 years since a lot of this other weird government shit has happened. And I'm like, that looks really fucking suspicious, man.
Yeah.
You know, looks really suspicious. Fucking Nazi scientists and, you know, fake airplanes over Cuba and shit like that. You know, I'm like, that's really sus. Like, that's super sus. So, you know, I don't know. So I just was interested in, you know, what your old theories used to be, if they're, you know, and I don't know.
So listen, anyone with a internet connection can figure out what they can learn that there's no way you've ever seen it all or heard it all.
Yeah.
I could say, I used to think, man, I've heard it all, because there are theories that there were no planes, that they were CGI infused into video. And I saw those and I thought, well, that's bullshit.
But all this other stuff, you know, maybe, you know, first of all, I'm gonna start with a story. I was flying up
recently, and it'll be a quick story, but I was flying up here and I was in the airport and we just got past security, and I was sitting there and was putting my shoes back on, putting my belt back on, putting my wedding ring back on, getting all the papers that I had taken off for the security. And this older guy, maybe between 60, 70 years old, he puts his hat back on after getting completely put back together, and he looks at me and he says, "The terrorists won."
Shit.
And I looked him in the eyes and I didn't know what to say. So I said, "Yes, sir." Because anyway, so that said,
It's a valid point.
the first thing is this. Okay. And this is the only conspiracy I'll really jump into and talk about. And you mentioned it, that 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know there's identity theft issues that you can look up, but 15 of the 19 hijackers, and nobody talks about it. We accept it. We've heard it. We've all heard it and we all understand it.
But it's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal for some reason.
Yeah.
And let's be clear that right after it happened, we did not invade Saudi Arabia. We invaded Afghanistan. And then very soon after, we invaded Iraq. And I'm the kind of person that thinks it's an amazing coincidence that, let me ask you a question. Who's our number one enemy in the Middle East right now?
Iran. Okay.
It's not a coincidence to me that those two countries are on the eastern border and western border of Iran, that we attempted to close in Iran right after 9/11. I feel like there's something bigger always going on. So I don't want to.
Oh, there absolutely is. Yeah.
I think that goes all the way back to the Carter administration.
Yes, it does. Yes,
Our
it does.
fucked up relationship with Iran stems back to the Iranian Revolution.
And here's another thing that stems back to the Cold War, and that stems back to 1945. And if it weren't for World War I, that wouldn't happen. If it weren't for Gavrilo Princip shooting an archduke on the streets of Sarajevo, we would not have had 9/11 happen. Yeah, is a fact that I think about all the time. And we are perpetually doomed.
A nation that doesn't exist anymore.
No, Austria-Hungary.
It doesn't exist anymore. It has shaped humankind for centuries.
Yep.
At this point,
exactly.
For a century. It's fucking wild.
Yep.
It's also why everybody should go listen to Hardcore History from Dan Carlin.
Everyone should.
Everyone should.
Absolutely.
So
that's because you were talking about the 15 hijackers essentially being identified as from Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think just to add some objective reasoning perhaps to that situation, right? I don't think, especially given the time that it was in, this was the pre-9/11 world. Things were completely different, right? it's not hard for me to think that they could have just gotten identities from there or have been from there, because Saudi Arabia before Iran took the reins, they were the number one lead sponsor of terror around the world. The only thing that changed was 9/11 happened. And then there was a weird shift in leadership and all this thing. Saudi Arabia has changed, and now we're homies with them. That's weird.
Yeah.
But that's, it's not, I don't think it's weird to say that. I mean, yeah, but then again, that was 2001, and it is a completely different world now than it was then.
Yeah. Sure.
And I think having their nationalities at that point, I mean, I don't think that really, I don't think it changes the calculus that much.
No, and I think you're right, because there's no, like you said, the border issues that Saudi Arabia deals with are different from anything that we would ever understand, having lived in the United States forever. So it's entirely possible that is the case, and it's perfectly explained. One thing I'll say is, you mentioned they were at one point the number one state-sponsored terror, state-sponsor for terror, but we've always been buds with them. We've always,
because they always own the oil. That's
yes.
Always.
Well, we crucify China and Russia for their support over the last century for North Korea, but Saudi Arabia is basically our North Korea.
Oh, absolutely.
That's Cold War politics, baby. It's
and
they got
nukes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got nukes, and that right there is the issue. So I'm going to bring up something about Trump that I don't want to spark too much of a conversation, maybe.
Let's do
it's just a segue. But it's people thought for a while, the collusion between him and Russia. Collusion. There's got to be collusion. Oh, no collusion. All the while, people are, I think, hugely mistaken in thinking that there needed to be collusion. There didn't need to be any collusion. Russia got what they wanted. Whether you agree with what happened or not, Russia got exactly what they wanted.
Still getting it now.
Yeah. Oh, left and right, man.
Oh, they're getting it more and more now. I mean, who's got more influence in the Middle East now than anyone else in the world? Russia does.
Yep.
And
we've Turkey is
we've talked about that before when we were talking about this turmoil, this continued effect from the Russian influence that started with a minimal amount of rubles that were spent on social media, messaging and stuff like that. And we argued at one point, like, at this point, the rubles don't matter. The fact that he was even spent in rubles doesn't even matter anymore, because it's carried on so far past fake ads, that it's been 4 years now, and it's still the same thing is still happening, the same discussions, no progression. Like, it's all, you said it exactly as they wanted. It's continued to happen, for a minute amount of rubles that were spent on Facebook,
And the idea, though, is that, like you said, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And I think that, the United States did not have to engage in some crazy conspiracy after, I've believed a lot of things in my life. I've been a lot of different people. I do not believe the United States needed to engage in such a conspiracy in order for 9/11 to happen. All they needed to do was fight against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan and supply weapons, creating Al-Qaeda, setting the stage for the Taliban. And then,
wait, we did that.
Yeah, exactly. And then support Israel like we've done since 1947. Rahm Emanuel has an amazing quote. It's a terrible quote, but it's funny that it came from him, but I'm sure a lot of people throughout history have said it, which is, I'm going to paraphrase here, but never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what 9/11 is. It's a crisis, and there were opportunities to be exploited because of that crisis. On a macro level, talking about, again, Afghanistan, Iraq, Saddam Hussein. On a micro level, talking about Enron, talking about Dick Cheney's personal
Halliburton.
Yep, Halliburton, personal ties to contractors and whatnot. Talking about Blackwater, that's micro,
Fucking goddamn it, Blackwater, right? God damn it. Fucking Eric Prince. I fucking hate Eric Prince.
I thought he was the Antichrist for like 10 years.
Fucking Eric Prince, and then fucking... Somehow, I have been so upset about this since fucking Trump got into office. Somehow, Eric Prince's fucking sister is the Secretary of Education. Betsy DeVos is Eric Prince's sister. I swear to God.
Uneducated I am.
Her maiden name is Betsy Prince. She is Eric Prince's sister, and she's in here like, oh no, fucking, let's just cut education 14% across the board. Fuck the Special Olympics. We need to put this money into national security. And also, have you met my brother Eric? Do you know him? Because God damn it, is he a great guy? And Eric Prince was, in this fucking meeting in the Moscow Tower with Donald Trump Jr. and with fucking, what's his face? Paul Manafort, you know what I'm saying? He was in this meeting. They're like, oh, it's about adoption. Adoption. And but Eric Prince was kicking it in the corner. Yep. Just like, no word. I think Russian babies, maybe one day, I might do that. And it's like, fuck you, man. Oh God. I hate it.
I will say, to Trump's defense in this situation, Eric Prince has been trying to get Blackwater involved in the Middle East since day one of Trump being inaugurated, and it has not happened. And so I have enough faith to think that it will not happen.
Is it still called Blackwater, or is it called
still?
Well, I think I'm not sure. I think the artist formerly known as Blackwater, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, you don't want to give up such good publicity.
Right, absolutely, Fucking goddamn Eric Prince still out there arguing for the privatization of the world. I can't. I can't with Eric Prince.
Oh man,
it's tough.
I'm happy you brought that up.
Well, and I don't really know how deep to dive into 9/11 at this point, because I could go into the things I used to believe, but that there were bombs planted in the buildings, that, building 7 was demolished purposefully because the third plane or the fourth plane that was crashed in Pennsylvania was supposed to hit that one or something like that. There are all these different ideas. The security camera footage of the Pentagon, it doesn't look like an airplane crash. It looks like, all the rubble and everything kind of looks like, what do people think? It was a missile.
Right.
Like whatever.
A cruise missile or some shit.
But aside from all that, like the systematic changes that happened the day after, there's enough fuckery in that to be able to go, hey, I don't care whether we're talking 9/11 is an inside job or not. What happened afterward was obviously a bunch of people, Dick Cheney in the White House at this point, essentially running the country, because we all know George W. Bush does not have the mind to run the country.
Right.
We have him pulling the strings. Mm-hmm. Why do we not think that this was, that all leads back to Cheney and his track record of fuckery. It all comes down to it. You can assign the Patriot Act onward. Mm-hmm. All that stuff happened, and fucking Dan Carlin talked about it on his show back when he used to do Common Sense podcast.
Yeah, he stopped since Trump because, I actually
how you
can't blame
do
him
it?
a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. We've had such a fundamental shift in government now that fucking Democrats are getting elected as Republicans, and Democrats that are running now don't even come close to a Democrat 10 years ago. Yeah. That's not that long ago.
Right.
And they're unrecognizable from what they are now.
I was thinking about that earlier when you guys were talking about like Barack Obama and Donald Trump, how the parties had kind of like wrapped themselves around, who they are, or Bernie Sanders and, or Joe Biden and Donald Trump, whoever it was. And I thought that was interesting because I think if you look at the parties as they existed when we were growing up, in that general era, they're completely different than they were now, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing, I think a good example that Colin and you've talked about before is the emoluments thing, right? Yeah. When you're talking about genuine emoluments concerns with the president that's in the White House, do you know what I'm talking about, emoluments?
Nope.
So the emoluments clause of the Constitution.
If I did, I'd say nope.
That's right. The emoluments clause of the Constitution has to do with payments to the president, especially from like foreign countries, and then in general just gaining from the office, other than the salary that they're getting. And so
using your office to enrich your personal
yeah. And so there were concerns that I had immediately when the president chose not to put all of his assets into a blind trust, right? So immediately off the bat, I didn't like that's what he did. That breaks all precedent from previous executives. They've all fucking, Jimmy Carter selling his peanut farm and shit, that he's like, I'm not just going to separate myself from this, So
you're talking about like now Donald Trump is advertising his son's book and stuff like that.
Right. Right. And there was a few weeks ago talks, he said that he was going to try and host the G20 at his own resort, and that's what like was the biggest thing for me. And right after we talked about it, he backed off it, but even that there was any discussion, and then when he backed off, he was like, oh, because of concerns about some phony emoluments clause, which is like, well, phony. Actually, it's been in there since they fucking wrote it. So, there's kind of no question. If you look at a genuine emoluments concern, right, I feel that would be a much bigger concern to the Republican Party that we grew up with than it is now. Now, like I said, a genuine, actual concern or challenge to the emoluments clause. You have a Republican Party that's like, it's fine. I'm going to go and stay as a resort this weekend. So it's not a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
And a Democratic Party who, because they hate Trump so much, are like, no, this is a fucking problem. You know, he's wasting taxpayer money, which is like, you know, when you're, Jesus Christ, talking about, you know, universal health care and shit and $30 trillion, it's like, what's the argument?
What are you talking about?
So it's almost backwards, you know, that you, like I said, a genuine actual argument for a challenge to the emoluments clause, and the party that should care about wasting tax dollars, and they're always trying to penny pinch, you know, that's the general idea of the Republican Party is, you know, slash taxes and all this shit. Someone's wasting tax dollars, pocketing them themselves. The Republican Party doesn't give a shit.
No, it's because the parties have they've lost all track of any kind of, you know, morals that they used to have, any kind of central ethos that they used to have. A conservative these days, maybe a handful of them that believe in what I would call true conservatism.
Yeah.
They have no voice whatsoever. And the party, the problem is it's become party politics. Everything is party. Party this, party
Scoring
that, party
points
that.
for your team. Scoring points.
Right.
And Mitch McConnell in the lead of the Republican Party, because you can act like it's Trump, but that's just ridiculous. Trump has no real power within the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell holds all the power of the establishment Republicans, and he will not do a single thing to risk losing the office of the presidency. There's one Trump card left. He can't do anything about the Senate. He's doing what he can by getting people out there, and he's getting Trump out there to do all these rallies so that they'll, you know, maintain as much support as possible. But at the end of the day, he's only worried about their party losing power.
Yeah.
And everything else doesn't matter. I mean, you would have to have like video proof of maybe a live stream where Donald Trump walks through the streets of Manhattan and goes on a shooting spree to get the Republicans to vote against him on anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's become so blatantly obvious to anybody that's willing to look. It's just disgusting. It's like, why do we even have this representative democracy if you guys are just choosing to not pay it any homage whatsoever? You don't even pay it lip service anymore.
Yeah.
We're in power, tough shit. What we say goes. And then we're going to fight tooth and nail against the other party to maintain our power. That's the only thing that goes. There's no real concern for anything anymore. You know, the fucking border crisis. It all just kind of boiled over and then steamed off, and now nobody gives a shit about it anymore.
But here, I live 15 minutes away from a former for-profit prison that is now housing illegal immigrants, and no one talks about it. You know, it's just, it disappeared from the news.
Yep, because now nothing else matters. We don't need to worry about that. It's not boiling over anymore. Let's just turn that burner on low and let it ride.
We need to just have all of our focus on, you know, on these hearings that are only fucking a fraction of people give a shit about anyway, you know? It's
so on that note, we should probably add that with the first round of public hearings being finished, we have since moved on in the impeachment inquiry to essentially a handoff over to the House Judiciary Committee.
To do a report.
Yeah, and they're going to, I think there's going to be another hearing involved in that. The chairman, Jerry Nadler, has sent a letter up to the White House essentially asking the president if he wants to have representation for the hearing there. And then after that, they'll look at either drafting up articles of impeachment or not, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah.
That's basically where we're at. After all the hearings wrapped up last week, you know, a couple weeks ago, I think the biggest one, I think, out of all that was that Dr. Hill came in there and talked for a while. And, you know, just a bunch of people in the Foreign Service have worked in and out of it. I mean, there was no real bombshells dropped, if you will.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at factually as far as the impeachment inquiry goes. There's not really a lot to talk about. It's just we're waiting at this point to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll get to that on the next one. What's up, Michael Barker?
I was going to ask if I can put an exclamation point on the Middle East / 9/11 conversation.
Definitely.
Just a final deal. And it's a little bit of I love history, so it's a little bit of
we all love history here.
After World War I, we carved up the Middle East. We carved up the Ottoman Empire and created the modern Middle East.
Yes.
And
Majority drawn up by the British.
yeah, if you look at your world map and you see a really straight line, if you go far back enough in time, you'll find some mustachioed British dude drawing a line in the sand, or some French guy, or some Belgian dude, or something. Even the Germans, like there was just a colonization.
So
everywhere.
split it here, here, and here.
Yep.
And well, what about these cultural boundaries? Forget those, right?
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, and after World War I, there was a whole group of people spread from northern Iran through Iraq, through Syria, and into Turkey, called the Kurds, that wanted a Kurdistan. They wanted their own country. And we said, oh, yeah, we'll give you that. We'll give you that. And we didn't.
We'll figure it out later.
We didn't do it. To this day, we have bargained with the Kurds to go against Saddam. And then we've allowed Saddam to, attack him back. And then we've invaded Iraq and said, hey, Kurds, come on, let's do this. And then we attack Saddam together, and we put a Kurdish president in charge, and we say, hey, we need your help over here, against the Iranians. We need help in Syria against ISIS. Oh, but you're getting a little too powerful. We need, okay, Turkey, go ahead and, just march across and put them down,
Oh, yeah.
The whole foreign policy in the Middle East has been regarding the Kurds, and the Kurds getting just enough power to help us out, not enough to maintain their power and keep it going. And because there are so many different types of Kurds, they're so easily swayed and bought in different places. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the earth in a nutshell. What's that quote from Gangs of New York? It's just a famous quote. You can always pay one half of the poor to kill the other half.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and what's interesting is that you're obviously very correct about that, is what you're saying about the Kurds. And then the argument in the current administration to step back and allow Turkey to do this is like, oh, well, they're suckling at the teat of America anyway. So we need to kind of defend our own, and we need to look after ourselves. So it's interesting,
first.
that's like we're like, no, we need to help them out, but they're taking a little too much, so I'm going to take it back a little bit.
That's why General Mattis in his book, he talks about worrying so much about how our inconsistency affects our foreign politics, because all of a sudden he's getting ambassadors not talking to him anymore because we change course.
Yep.
And, our failure to listen to generals and to actually implement real change in the Middle East without, like you mentioned, trying to get personal gain at home,
right,
under our executive branch. We can deal with we cannot deal with our vices, nor the cures, the remedies to cure them.
Well, and that goes straight down to the ground with the soldiers that are there, that, they're only doing 9, maybe 12-month rotations. You're only there for that short amount of time. You can't get anything done, and then when you have to immediately hand it off to another group of people who are going to lead in a completely different way, they're going to conduct themselves in a completely different way. You're starting from scratch every single time. And that's, when you've been there for almost 20 years now, in 9, 12, 14-month rotations, depending on who's there, a different idea every single time you go there,
and the whole time it's the same tribal chief that you're talking to, who's there for his life.
Or his dad dies, and now it's his son who's doing that, and just remembers how bad his dad got fucked over for 10 years before that,
It's oil and water, man.
Yeah.
Like you talked about earlier with the Kurds. Like this is a region of the world that does not operate on the same wavelength as we do. We're completely different cultures who operate completely different. And back in the teens, when they drew those lines on a map and said, okay, this is yours, this is yours, this is yours, they had no concept of what they were actually dealing with on the ground. They don't know all the tribal intricacies. I almost fucking fucked that one up.
You've been doing good. You're killing it. Yeah.
And now we have to live with those consequences. We have stateless people all throughout the Middle East, and to pretend that we have an idea of what their society should be. It's oil and water. They're two different things. And then you just layer that on with the rotating shifts. I mean, Jocko said something during that Rogan podcast that resonated a lot with me when he talked about World War I and World War II. When you went off to war in 1940, you were there until the war was over.
Yeah.
There is none of that now. You rotate in and out. We have all this thing. It would be a completely different calculus if we were there until it was over.
Right.
If those squads were being there, and then as soon as you'd lose members, they'd get reinforced and all this. But there was no rotating home,
Right.
Unless you got your
Occasional
fucking
holiday leave, and that's it. Yeah.
that was it. And that doesn't exist anymore, and so we can't operate on the same, the same place, the same playbook we've always been going through.
There's always war now.
There is always war. Very 1984.
The terrorists won.
Yeah.
Well, they also have made us change our lifestyle. They, you can look at when we talk about Russia and the Middle East and our influence and stuff, it makes you question things like, should we pull out of the Middle East? I don't like the idea of us being there, but there's obviously now, if we move out, the Russians move in.
Yeah.
And now there's a whole geopolitics game you got to play. Yeah. There's no easy answers to this stuff. You want to be able to pick an ideological stance one way or the other. We should be there, we shouldn't be there. But the problem is, we're already there. We've already caused the series of events to create the problems that we have now. We have to deal with the current problems we have on the ground.
Right.
And it makes it really, really difficult because you may not like what you have to do now that you're there. But the problem is you're fucking there already. And whether that's the 7 years that I don't remember if it was Mattis talking about that or somebody's talking about you need to be there for 7 years, or it's the 3 generations that you always talk about.
Right.
Whatever we have going on obviously doesn't work very well. And that's what's going to happen. Time will tell.
Yeah.
Time will tell. Sports. I see.
Yeah, I don't really have I didn't take really as many notes as far as sports, but the Civil War is happening right now. Oregon is 9-2 as far as the season goes, and this is
Go
the last
Beavers.
game. So they're up 17-10 right now, and there's 2.5 minutes left. Oregon has the ball, so I think it'll probably be okay.
Yeah. Do you like that meme I sent you earlier about the Ducks?
Yeah, that was really funny. That was
great.
really funny.
Let's see if I can find it real quick.
But the only real big sports thing that I can think of, fucking Terrell Pryor got stabbed last night in Pittsburgh in the chest and the neck. He's a wide receiver. Yeah, I don't know how much you watch football.
I know
you
Terrell
tweet Dynasty.
Pryor,
Yes,
for
yeah.
sure.
He got stabbed in the chest and neck last night.
Is he still playing? Is he wide receiver?
No, he's a free agent right now. Yeah, so he's not signed to a team. But yeah, he was in Pittsburgh for something and was on the street and got fucking stabbed up. So I don't really know what the deal is with that. But this guy.
Oh God. We're talking about egg toss, right? That's the game we're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
egg toss,
Yeah,
right.
Professional egg toss.
Professional egg toss.
No, I think the only big sports thing I can think of in the last 2 weeks was the fight that had happened between the Browns and the Steelers, right? And there's
Rudolph.
Yeah, and Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett hitting him in the head with the helmet.
Yeah,
and I know a bunch of Browns fans and Steelers fans, and their opinion on the fight is directly correlated with whether they're a Browns fan.
It's
or a
really
Steelers
weird.
fan.
It was strange the very next morning to see people making arguments that he deserved it. He shouldn't have been fucking
hit him
good.
in the head with a helmet.
Whoa! I'm like, what do you mean, man? I'm a an old school football fan. I like big hits and shit like that. But that's different than swinging a helmet on someone's unprotected dome piece. You know what I mean? In the era of concussions and CTE that we live in now, when you know how bad it is just him getting hit during the game, to strike him over the head with, it's lucky that he didn't cut his head open, to
He's
hit him with the
didn't,
edge of the
hurt
helmet.
His neck, pulling the helmet off his head.
Yes.
Just that alone.
And so,
I guess he's lucky. Myles Garrett is lucky.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess.
Myles Garrett's so lucky he didn't hurt Rudolph.
Yeah. So the punishments that came from that, I believe that Rudolph got a $50,000 fine or something like that. And Mike Pouncey, one of the offensive linemen, he received a 3-game suspension that was brought back down to 2. Myles Garrett is suspended indefinitely for the rest of this season, the playoffs, and then possibly into next season.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you did commit assault.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Right. And then one of the other, Ogunjobi, one of the linemen for the Browns, he received a 1-game suspension that I believe was upheld. Myles Garrett also alleged in his appeal hearing that Mason Rudolph used a racial slur, a nondescript racial slur during this altercation, which is what intensified Myles Garrett's reaction and caused this interaction.
That happens a lot. You see if you see a referee throw a flag and nothing is punched, there's no punch, no reason to throw the flag. It's usually something like that.
Yeah. And so That was the first time that it was brought up. There was nothing mentioned after the game, that had happened. It was just after time had gone by during the appeal hearing that this was brought up. Mason Rudolph's lawyer said that they vehemently deny that ever happened, and that it almost sounded like the language that they used, and I should have brought up an article so I could use quotes, but it almost sounded like they were gearing up for a possible countersuit for defamation. Like they were, the language was so firm and so exact that that's just what it felt like to me. I obviously can't attest that that's what's happening, but it's the language. If you look up an article, it was very particular. And
you mean kind of like saying, like, if you're going to say that Rudolph said that and that's so blatantly untrue, then we're going to sue you back for that.
And it wasn't exactly like that, but like he was using like just very technical language, saying something like defamation and shit like that. And so it's not good.
Because defamation is hard. It's hard to get to come out on top in a legal defamation lawsuit in America.
Yeah.
It's because we have free speech. It's real hard to get somebody on defamation because it starts to boil down to intent. It's impossible.
I don't know if it matters that he said it like and I don't even know that it was a court of law. It just was during an NFL appeal hearing. So I don't know if it matters, or it's easier an argument to make because he said it during an official hearing, and it isn't just like a statement he made during an interview. Like it's an official NFL hearing in which he made this statement that, that Mason Rudolph said this shit. So I don't know. I think that it seems weird that if that's the case, no one else brought that up prior to that,
Like no other players, you mean?
Yeah, no other players. I mean, there was several other people that were right there. So it seems weird that wouldn't have been brought up at the time. I mean, Mike Pouncey is black, so it seems weird that he's standing there defending Mason Rudolph. And if he's going to hear him call Myles Garrett the N-word, that he's still going to be like, yep, fuck you. You still struck my quarterback. Like, you're dropping a hard R on a guy. I got to imagine that you're going to turn around and be like, what the fuck did you just say? I don't like,
you know what? Hit him.
Yeah. You can't do that. I'm standing here trying to fight this guy for you. And now you're throwing around like racial slurs. Like, that's not fucking cool. Yeah. I don't, what 75% of the league at least is black. At least as much of your locker room in Pittsburgh is black. So that's a dangerous statement to try and make that. That's going to turn the locker room against you immediately. If anyone finds out that you're using words like that, if you're throwing that shit around, no one's going to want to block for you. No one's going to want to play for you. That's not going to work. So I'm obviously not saying that Myles Garrett is lying, but I think that it seems weird that no one else said anything about it. The NFL is like, oh, we don't have audio of that, which it's
do they not record though? I don't know.
There's fucking sound discs right on the edge of the field, like all in the end zone and shit. And so I'm like, what do you mean you don't have any audio at all,
Yeah,
and
come
so
on.
Do you think the NFL is more or less efficient than military court martial?
It's fucking bad.
Like,
it's
the NFL's little, judicial section they have is a little sketchy as it is. Mm-hmm. You guys out there literally like beating up women, and like doing some fucked up shit, and they're like, oh, suspension. Oh no, we don't like that. You really fucked up. You're gone.
Yeah,
it's like, well, there's no real such thing as like legal precedent in the NFL.
People are getting 6-game suspensions for domestic violence, or even accused domestic violence. But then there was a guy, I don't remember what his name is, but he just got suspended indefinitely for betting on NFL games, right? Which obviously it doesn't look very good, like you're really not supposed to do that. But I don't know why the suspension for gambling is more extreme than for beating your fucking wife, that seems really weird.
Yeah.
Like,
if you screw with the man, if you screw with the top 1%, that's when they get you. That's why Bernie Madoff is in prison and not a bunch of other white collar guys.
Yeah,
I can't wait to watch that movie with De Niro playing Madoff. It looks so fucking good. I almost watched it the other
Anything
day.
with De Niro.
Yeah.
Have you seen Michael Barker? Have you seen Vice? With Christian Bale?
Yes, I have.
Fucking
I watched that on an
movie,
airplane.
right?
That was amazing. Christian Bale is
movie.
like, I forget Steve Carell as
what's his name?
The SecDef under the Bush administration. What is wrong with
weird
you?
ass name? It's a weird ass name.
It's no. I'm gonna think it before you get it. Rumsfeld.
Yep,
Donald Rumsfeld.
Yeah,
you saw it live. No,
incredible, right?
Recorded.
Incredible,
yeah, incredible. Really good.
That's all right. I can't type anything in the IMDb search box for some reason.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that whole movie was fantastic. I forgot to bring that up earlier when we were all talking about Dick Cheney. Yeah, that was
good.
That
was really
fucking great movie. We saw that. Me and Colin and Jordan went and saw that movie. It's awesome.
Yep,
yes,
I enjoyed it.
Good.
Yeah, so I think that's all that I have as far as sports goes. The Seahawks are still fucking balling out, 9-2, killing it. So I mean, we play
49ers or what now? They've lost one now, right?
Yeah, they're 10-1.
They lost against us.
They're 10-1. And they play again this week, so it's gonna be a good time.
Can I ask you a football question?
Anytime. Always.
Why, now that Nick Foles is healthy again,
yes,
why the fuck did he come back to play? Because Minshew was doing pretty good.
Oh, because he was the starter to begin with.
Who cares? It
And
sucks. Minshaw's kicking it. Sit down on the bench.
The general
You're getting
precedent.
Kaepernicked.
The general precedent among the NFL team is you won't lose your job to an injury. That's kind of how it goes. Like, if you get injured, we're going to let you come back and play for your job. But if you're really shitty after that, then we'll sit you down and we're going to bring the backup back in.
So Minshew just invested in his future heavily this season.
Yeah, because they could even trade him to another team as a
worth
backup
money now.
and
Really good point,
be
yeah.
worth really good capital. I mean, there's on many teams such a huge difference between the starting quarterback and the backup quarterback that on teams, Green Bay, right? If Aaron Rodgers goes out, Green Bay is not going anywhere.
No.
They're done for the season. It's over, Phillip Rivers, even as shitty as he is right now, if he goes, whoever their fucking backup is, they're done for the season. They don't stand a chance, Many teams are exactly that way. I would even argue the Seahawks, if Geno Smith is to have to play instead of Russell Wilson, we're fucked.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. We will lose at least half of the games that he has to play, at least half,
Not to mention the tribal knowledge that you lose from a quarterback who is, however well they're all fit, they have a dynamic together. The O-line, everybody has a dynamic. They play with Russ versus now you got a new guy in there who you might have played with sometimes, but
You got to relearn the game.
yeah,
right.
all
Geno
over again.
Smith he's going to get some reps at the end of practice just in case something happens and he has to play. But the vast majority of the reps that Geno Smith has taken is with the number twos. So he's playing with the backups for the wide receivers anyway. So the rapport that he has with the team is not with Tyler Lockett. It's not with DK Metcalf. It's with the other dudes that are going to play behind them,
just to stay fit enough physically to play.
Exactly.
And Minshew, I'm telling you, man, I mean, I was getting sick numbers from him.
He was doing pretty good.
He was doing pretty well. I think he might have earned himself a paycheck here in the future.
And he's in just his first year anyway. So whoever gets him is going to get him for dirt cheap anyway. He also, I think, was drafted in the 7th round. So,
and to think about how well
round quarterback
he had to meld with the team to be able to do what he did during his time on. Fuck, man, somebody needs to pick him up.
He did well, and he came from.
Who needs a new quarterback?
He came from Washington State,
actually. The Pats need a new quarterback.
Do you think so?
Definitely.
I guess there's whispers, that maybe Tom Brady is going to try and play somewhere else instead of New England. I don't know that I buy that. There was a whisper. I think that would be really weird.
That'd be like fucking Brett Favre leaving Green Bay.
Oh, you mean when he played for Minnesota?
Yeah.
And the Jets?
Yeah. That would be him if he left the Pats. He'd go to the Oakland Raiders or something. They might do all right. And then he'd get traded to the fucking Jets.
Yeah.
And then his career would be over.
Isn't Tom Brady the reason Garoppolo left New England?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what would be weird for me, because I felt that Garoppolo would have been a very good replacement for Brady.
Fantastic.
Not a great quarterback anywhere, but for Brady with that team, with that organization, would have been a great replacement. And I think maybe Brady knew it. And was
then he got nervous.
Yeah, peace.
Yeah.
That's what would be strange if Brady played somewhere else immediately after pulling those strings.
Yeah. I don't think that would ever happen. I think he's a New Englander till he dies. And then he's just going to go hang out at the Victoria's Secret mansion that they gave to Epstein, and it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
I also heard about Phillip Rivers maybe going to Tennessee or Carolina, because Carolina is
I
trying
want
to
to know where he brings his alligator boots, man. That quarterback, he's my favorite quarterback in the NFL and has nothing to do with his skill.
Yeah.
I want to have a beer with that dude and just hunt something.
There you go.
Carolina, I guess, is looking to maybe trade Cam Newton, and so they would be in the looks for a new quarterback. And Phillip Rivers doesn't. Okay, so this is a longer story than I made it out to be. I guess there's also whispers about LA possibly going to Europe to be in London, right? In like the next 5 to 10 years. But Philip Rivers doesn't want anything to do with that. He's got 1,000 kids and can't be taking them out of America to go to schools. No, he just... Okay, so get this. Philip Rivers is, I guess, the biggest trash talker in the NFL. Like, talks the most shit out of anybody in the NFL.
What?
Doesn't swear. He doesn't curse at all.
Oh, so he's like a...
Son of a frick!
Your mother
Shit like
wears
all over
combat
the
boots to
sidelines.
church.
He's just telling you that you're terrible. Just that you suck. That's it. Just a straight up, just like, you're terrible. You're not good. You fucking suck at football like I don't, but no swearing of any kind ever.
Maybe
really weird.
Maybe he's a Baptist.
I don't know. He is very religious, but he's not Mormon or anything. Maybe he is. I don't think so, though.
Where's he from? Where'd he go to college?
I'm not sure.
Where'd he play for college?
Utah.
I thought it was like
You know what's funny is I talk a lot of crap about the Mormons, but good Lord, I've never met a Mormon that wasn't like an amazing
North
human
Carolina
being.
State. He's from Carolina.
Oh,
right.
Well, that makes sense. He's got good old fashioned Southern values.
Yeah.
Family man.
So he's got just 1,000 children. I'm trying to see exactly how many, but this is obviously way more about
Imagine Thanksgiving at that house.
personal life.
Jeez. It's probably a big house.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
I'm
got a whole
sure.
staff to cook. He don't have to worry about taking on that burden.
I listened to a sports podcast that's called Pardon My Take, and it's like part comedy, part sports, and they were talking about how they heard that Philip Rivers' house is kind of like a police station or a fire station. You just take your kid there and drop it off, and they just have to take it. Yeah, and that's how they got all these kids. But yeah, and so because Philip Rivers doesn't want to even consider leaving the country, they're like, well, we'll just fucking trade you to Carolina because they're going to get rid of Cam Newton, and then we'll just draft us a new QB and we'll move on from there.
Yeah.
So
is Cam Newton, is he going to be coming to a close here pretty soon?
Cam Newton
I think he's been going downhill for a while.
Been dealing with like surgeries and shit. He's been really unhealthy the last 2 years, which attributes a lot to why he's so terrible.
It's also why you throw so many temper tantrums.
Yes.
He's like a little baby.
So he's been out pretty much all year. Like I think he played a couple of games in the beginning of the year and then has been out ever since, just getting surgeries and getting healthy and shit. But Carolina's ready to move on.
Well,
the guy that they have
see a
now,
psychiatrist.
the guy that they have now, Kyle Allen, is like an okay fill-in until they get the next guy, that they want to work on. So they're doing okay. Plus they have Christian McCaffrey and he's just carrying the whole fucking team in Carolina. So it's weird. It's weird how much that guy has. The receiving yards, the rushing yards, it's absurd, Christian McCaffrey.
It's absurd.
He's from Stanford. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's always, to me anyways, that's always been Cam's downfall is all you got to do is make him angry. And as soon as he gets angry, his skill level goes down because he's just
Plays
too
like shit.
angry.
Yeah.
So you just piss him off. You get one pick six, you're going to win the game. Done. You just pissed him off.
Really
You pissed in his Cheerios enough, and now it's over.
Yeah.
He obviously doesn't eat Wheaties. I don't know. I don't know.
Probably 100 Cheerios.
And thank God, can Kaepernick be gone now? Can we be done with
I don't.
this Kaepernick
Well, he
situation?
hasn't. So we talked about this a little bit last time because he was working out that day, and
Yeah.
so he left, and like did his workout at another place, and
Yeah, he's changed the venue.
from what I understand,
sketchy because he only had like 2 hours to decide whether or not he was going to take
Yes,
the deal.
yeah.
And the NFL promised they were going to give him a list of teams that were going to be
And
there.
then didn't
they
do it.
Scrapped that
Yeah,
idea.
right,
So
right.
he probably thought it was like a PR stunt and just canceled. There's a lot
So
of
I
weirdness.
told Colin that day that I think that this
So I
he
thought you
had
meant
this.
you told Colin Kaepernick.
No. I was talking on the phone to Cap, and what I told him, no,
to the streets is on the horn with these.
no, I told Colin that day that I think that his plan to move the workout was premeditated far before that day, but he executed it that day. I think that the moment that he started to think that everything wasn't on the up and up, he's like, well, I'm just going to set up another thing, and when the day comes, I'll just tell all the reporters that we're moving it and fuck the NFL, and we'll just do it that day, I know that he knows that if he announced before the day of the workout that he was going to do it on his own, the NFL would have said fuck him even more and try to tank it and do whatever they could to bring it down. So I think that he intended the moment that he even caught a whiff of suspicion, I think he intended to move it, which I think is fine. My whole deal from the beginning, we've talked about Colin Kaepernick just 1,000 times on this show. And my whole deal from the beginning was not what he was doing, or, you know, that I don't agree with him, or I think that it's anti-American. It's nothing like that, right? My deal was always from a sports perspective, and that I didn't think that he was being blackballed because of what he was doing. I thought that he was being blackballed by the league because he was showing poor leadership skills amongst teams by acting on his own in a sport that consists of 53 men on a roster. Right. And if I was an owner of a league, I wouldn't want him to be the leader of my team anyway, because he's acting on his own. I personally feel that if they are going to protest, then they should either all do it or no one should do it, because you can't win a football game by yourself. Doesn't matter that you're the quarterback, you're the best wide receiver, you're fucking Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham. It doesn't matter. If you're playing by yourself, you cannot win. And I feel that because it's a team of 53 people, then that many people should be involved in whatever they're going to do on the sidelines if they're going to do it that day. I think that he's well within his rights to use his status as a quarterback at a separate location that's not funded by the NFL to do whatever he wants, but say, but I'm also a quarterback and I'm using my stance to do so, you know, because I don't think that it's unreasonable that you're actively suing someone and then they don't want to give you a job. You know, when you're actively involved in legislation against or legal action against the NFL, for no one in that entity to want to give you a job, I don't think is that weird. You know?
So much of it depends on public opinion too, because if someone stands up and says, I'm going to, use this microphone at this NFL press conference to thank our troops and thank God and do all those things, no one's going to blink an eye.
Right.
And, Colin Kaepernick, it's hard to ignore the fact that I think that any team that picks up Colin Kaepernick is going to lose money on jersey sales based on the public opinion of the people who tune into the NFL.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to ignore that, like, we're not going to pick him up because we're just going to lose money for the franchise.
Right.
And the whole goal, if you follow that trail all the way to the top, the whole goal of a franchise is to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad business.
Yeah. No, and like I said, I think that he's well within his rights to use that status, to say anything that he wants with that platform that he's given. Sure. But I don't think that using the NFL's platform is the right way to go about it and expect no repercussions to happen, you know? And there's a lot of people that tried to draw comparisons between like him and, Muhammad Ali was really active, when he was politically active and doing all these things. He was also a boxer. He was a one person who stood in the ring and fought by himself. He had a team of people that stood behind him, but they weren't fighting. They weren't active in that match. True. He was by himself, and when you're playing, I personally feel, like I said, when you're playing on a team where there's 53 people there, you need to be in total unison with all these other 52 dudes to be using that platform for what it is, or else you shouldn't be doing it. I think that it just shows poor leadership skills, and that's just my personal opinion, that because it's a team sport like that, you got to have everyone on board or you shouldn't be doing it, and that's just me personally. But I never disagreed with the purpose of his protest or anything like that. I think that it's strange to expect to be able to do things like that and for there to be no repercussions, and a lot of people don't like to compare being an NFL player to having a regular job, but you can't protest however you want at a regular job and expect to keep your job.
The whole idea of freedom of speech does work in mysterious ways and both ways, and whatnot.
Especially for employment. You're not, like I said, you're not talking about, I'm going to be at City Hall on this day and time, and I'm going to speak for as long as I want. Because in that instance, if you're doing that, if you're only speaking at City Hall or, wherever, some other public area where you're allowed to be and say whatever the fuck you want, and then you're seeing negative repercussions within the NFL, that's a different thing to talk about, But you're using game day, this thing here, to try and do this, to expect no one in the league to affect that, I think is silly.
I think the counter is also that, like, there's always an argument that you shouldn't do this here. You should do it somewhere else.
Yeah.
You should do it on YouTube, or you should do it on this other street corner. You should do it on your own time. But if Colin Kaepernick had started by, just getting on YouTube and doing it, people would still be talking about the same shit. People would still want him to get out of the 49ers. I'm going to boycott the NFL as long as they allow him to do this. And we'd still be encountering a lot of the same issues, I think.
I agree, but I think that the validity of the argument is way less than it is now. If you're taking the element of the NFL out of it, other than this is a part of who I am, because I can't separate myself from my employment in the NFL. I am an NFL quarterback. I am the quarterback of the 49ers. That's who I am as a person, but I'm not using a stadium as a platform. I'm not doing it at the practice field. I'm not doing it, while I'm wearing a jersey. I'm not doing any of that shit. And it separates you from any of this gray area of whether or not they're doing it for their own private, gain or anything like that. It's if you've completely separated yourself, you've removed that argument from validity. It is no longer a valid argument for anyone to make, that you're doing anything to try and shit on the league because you're private protesting wherever you want, Sure. And so it's not that I think that it's totally right, because you're correct. There's always an argument that you should be doing it in another place. But if you're doing that for such a divisive, for lack of a better term, divisive subject, just remove that from the argument, because any of those people that are still trying to say that afterwards are just fucking stupid. There's another reason that they're trying to cover up with this argument that you removed by not using the NFL as a platform anyway.
Sure.
And that's my deal with it.
It's arguable that if he did something like I mentioned, YouTube, that's such a good way to get ideas.
Yeah.
If he did something like that, it's arguable that it would be bigger now than it was.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Because more players would be like, I'll do that too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so then you divorce yourself from that connection of the league. Like, be like, dude, I don't shit where I sleep.
Right.
Or eat or whatever the expression is.
I can do a commercial for any company I want. I can,
Exactly. And so when this happened with the workout, when he went and did his own thing, he had his own private crew, he had his own receivers, he had his own everything. I was like, well, this is exactly what I've been asking for this whole time. He said, fuck the NFL. I've got something to say. I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to show my skills. And if you guys don't like it, then that's your own fucking problem. So I was like,
respect.
Words. Yeah, this is literally what I asked for this whole time, is for you to do something on your own to remove the NFL from it so that they can't, fuck it up for themselves. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, good for you, man. I know you did the right thing. I think you thought there was some sus shit going on with the NFL, and so you just did it on your own. And that's exactly what I've been asking for this whole time. So
maybe too late now.
And it is unfortunate. Yeah. But like I said,
the problematic aspect of free speech is, the First Amendment, as far as it's concerning free speech, it doesn't protect you from reprisals except from the government.
Right.
And in the private industry, you need to make calculated decisions. If you're up and coming up in the universities these days and you're, an outspoken conservative, you need to watch what you say, because that's not the government. They can decide they don't like what you say and blackball you out. They can make your life impossible. And the NFL is no different. There is politics
and media, like we're talking about Andrew Yang or fucking Tulsi Gabbard. If you if they don't like what you're saying, they will just wipe you out of existence. Yep. They'll just cover it up.
Amen.
Yeah.
I think that was healthy.
I agree.
Michael Barker, this was fantastic.
This was awesome. Thanks, guys.
You had a good time?
Thank you, man.
Yeah, I did. I had a blast. This was awesome.
Awesome.
I enjoyed every moment.
We have some more plugs that you want to throw out there, all the same ones before, whatever you want to plug onto.
I always like to finish by plugging other stuff, so I want to plug this podcast I know of called Salt of the Streets. I've never heard of it. You should tune into Salt of the Streets. Also, I love hardcore history, like we talked about. Dan Carlin. The book Call Sign Chaos by General James Mattis. I like being bigger than my britches here. Just like, none of these people need my endorsement.
But they appreciate it.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
Yep. And just read books. Just read. Never stop learning. If you encounter something that you're unaware of, just look it up, Google it, and read as many articles as possible. Go down that Wikipedia drain where you start by reading, about Disney, and then all of a sudden you're reading about thermonuclear proliferation, and you don't know how you got there, but you're not upset about it, and you wouldn't turn back time.
I see the connection right there. I see that.
Exactly.
He's already worked it out. He's done that before.
I'm up there drawing the fucking strings on the pegboard,
Yep. What's that?
It's Always Sunny.
Always Sunny.
Yeah,
it's Always Sunny.
There it is.
That's me.
All right. So I'm not as shameless as you, so I'm going to go ahead and plug our last social media, or our own social medias. So my personal social media, I'm at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram, and Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both of those things. We have our Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our YouTube at Salt of the Streets, Facebook at Salt of the Streets, and you can find all of that on saltofthestreets.com. It's fantastic. We're currently working on updating it. It's going to be awesome. And we end the show every week with a line of my choosing, right? And when we first started, they were lines from It's Always Sunny, actually. I still love that show. And so I would just pick just random lines that I had heard, and that's what we would use as the closing lines for the show.
Right. The body a little bit.
Yeah, a lot bad shit. And so we always told people that whoever figured it out, whoever guessed where all these lines were from, it was a secret. Then they got a free t-shirt. And so someone finally guessed it after fucking like 65 episodes or some shit. And so I had to pick a new theme. And so this line, super random, it's not going to make any sense, but it is from some form of media, and there is a general theme to it. And so whoever picks up the theme from this new set of lines will get a free t-shirt. You get a free t-shirt for being on the show anyway. Yes. Yeah. Because you're tall, I'm going to order a tall tee and I'll send it to you, because the ones that we have are just going to be too short. But yeah, I'll get a tall tee and I'll mail you too. So
be like a sleeveless t-shirt if you put it on now.
Yeah, exactly. All midriff is what it would be. And so we just, so we'll
That's nice of you. Most people just get me triple XL, but then I just look like an umbrella.
It doesn't
increase the length at all.
Being tall men, we understand what it's like. You obviously have it worse than either of us, but that
extra 3 inches goes a long way.
Yeah. But I understand the struggle. So with that, you guys like to suck each other's cocks, huh?
I mean, don't tempt me with a good time.
We call that stabbing the mud crab.